Hello, 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 hello. This is the Gene and Tonic Show. Hello, welcome back to the Gin and Tonic Show. It's Sunday. It is 6 p.m. UTC, and it means that there is another episode of the Gin and Tonic Show. The Gin and Tonic Show is what is it? It is a discussion platform. It's a get together. It's all sorts of things, and it means that we talk about Islam. So the more the merrier. So if you want to discuss something on Islam, if you have a suggestion, if you have a comment, if you want to just get something off your chest, if you want to ask a question, if you want to correct something that we've said before, come in. Sorry, come on in and just talk to me and contribute to the discussion. There's no censorship here, and you can just come in and talk about anything that you want as long as it's in connection with Islam. So we are non-believers. Well, I am a non-believer, and most of the people here are non-believers, unfortunately, because I would love to have some Muslims here who can contribute and can explain what it is that they believe and why they believe it. Because if Islam is really that important in my life, or it should be important in my life, then I should know about it. But at the moment, there's nobody really who has convinced me that it should be Christianity, Islam, or it should be Zoroastrianism, Hinduism, Sikhism, Rastafarianism, and any of the other 200 gods that are active today. Now, in the afternoon, we had a very interesting discussion with a Christian who did not understand the concept of a non-believer. And he made statements like atheists believe that the universe comes from nothing, like the Big Bang is wrong, and atheists this and it was quite astonishing that somebody, I mean, he was a young guy. I mean, nothing wrong with being young, but you should, I think, be able to operate Google, and you should be able to find out what these things are. But it shows that even though I don't understand it, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who don't understand this either, it is important to always define what it is that you're talking about. And I know it goes on people's nerves, and actually I should automate this, but I always do the following. On the Gin and Tonic Show, we talk about Islam, but the way that it works is that I first do the definitions, then we go through a video of the week, then we do some misconceptions, news from this, we develop some topics, and then after we've chatted about this and we've exchanged views and everything, then we do the Hadith of the week, which is presented by Ali, who is a mixture, who's a well, actually he's the child of Ike and me, because I sort of deliver the oral, the voice part, and then Ike does the rest. He does his magic. Now, we're talking about Islam from the view, or through the, well, I hate this expression, through the glasses, from the viewpoint of a non-believer. In other words, I couldn't give a continental damn what people's beliefs are. Anybody can have any god, they can believe in, I don't know, they can pray to the sun, they can pray to stingrays. I don't care, as long as it doesn't affect me. And this is what the discussion this afternoon was all about, trying to establish what it is that other people believe. And it's quite amazing how difficult it is. And I've had one theist, I think it was a Christian, I think, who actually admitted, yes, it seems that theists and atheists, the non-believers, actually think in a different way. Because for a theist, it is very difficult to imagine that there is no God, that you can think like a person without having a belief in a particular God. And so for them, it's like a world view to not believe, and they don't understand how ludicrous this is. So I don't know, it's quite strange. So anyway, there's no, I am a lot of things. Okay, I'm a I don't know, I can be a mechanic, I can be a taxi driver, I can be a baker, I can be all sorts of things from a professional point of view. Then I can be a naturalist, I can be I don't know what else there is. I mean, all the different possibilities that you can have as an outlook within your personality and then within your character. So none of this is affected by dragons or the non-existence of dragons. So if it is not dependent on dragons existing or not existing, why should gods make any difference? I mean, I don't depend on gods to understand the theory of evolution. I don't understand anything of this. I don't need anything to do with gods to understand cosmology. So this is quite weird for me that people would come to me and say, well, you need to do this, you need to understand this, and if you don't believe this, then you must believe something else. And it's not the case. So, no, just as I didn't, get chucked on this world speaking a language, just as I was taught a language, I was taught religion. Or some people are not taught religion, or are taught, go and look at what others think and see, and then decide for yourself. So it's personal, it's regional, it's cultural, it's personal. And I can't understand that people will say, well, this and this is cultural, this and this is religious. I don't understand these things. I don't collect stamps. I'm not. I don't believe in what you call these things, astrology, the star signs. So if I read this in a paper, well, you're a Capricorn, and now you are going to meet the woman of your life. That means all Capricorns are going to meet the woman of their life in this week. It doesn't make sense. So I am none of those things, none of the above. So I don't speak Russian, I don't smoke, I'm not a carpenter. So there's a lot of things I am not, but I don't go and say, hi, I'm something, I'm not a carpenter. I rather go to them and say what I am, instead of identifying as something that I am not. And I do not believe in a God. So I don't go to people and say, hi, this is me, and I don't believe in a God. I don't do that. So I don't understand why I need to identify as an atheist. And then it's even worse if people then come to me and say, you are practicing atheist. You are practicing atheism. Because there is no ism in being an atheist. Because I don't believe doesn't mean I'm practicing something. And then ism is always practicing something. At least I do not know any other isms that you don't practice. So there you go. We talk about Islam and we look at history and we see, well, this is the first thing what happened. When I started looking at Islam, the first thing I learned was that it is a political ideology. Because if I start at the beginning, that's what I see. If I look at Islam today, I see Islamic republics. And if I look at anything, I see that it's political. I see political statements. I see Sharia. I see the implementation of Sharia or something. And that's it. So it's political. It's not only a religion. Yes, there's a God in the middle calling the shots, but the rest is all political. Trees of green. Yeah. Okay, so this is what we do from the viewpoint of a non-believer. We look at Islam. So we look at the different elements, and we try and be as objective as possible. And as always, I am not saying that all Muslims this, all Muslims this. There is no such thing as a or the Muslim. They're all different. Same way as there is no such thing as the Islam. It's all different. I always compare it to the Matterhorn. If you put a Muslim on the left, he'll tell you it's a vertical wall, 1 kilometer high. Put a Muslim on the other side, tell me what do you see? Well, I see a gradual incline. Well, they're both looking at the same thing, but it's still different. So if I put all Muslims around the Matterhorn, they're all going to tell me something different. And this is the same thing with Islam. If you put Muslims in front of Islam, they will all tell you something different. So sometimes it seems like if you have 1.5 billion Muslims, you have 1.5 billion different versions of Islam. Okay. What has happened this week?
Did you see the big questions today?
Chaos, GPS.
Did you see the big question today?
I was going to get to the big questions. Okay, I don't know if we watch the same, because I spent a couple of hours watching TV, because I don't watch live TV. Okay, I record everything. And then when I have time, I sit down like 20 minutes here, 20 minutes there. So I watch Big Question, then I always go forward and check only the things that are pertaining to Islam, of course. So let's just, can we put this on the back burner for the moment?
Yes, yes, of course.
Brilliant. Because I want to speak about a video of the week that I saw today, that I saw 2 days ago, sorry. And this is something that I want to spend some time on this. Or maybe I should keep this back a little bit. The misconception of the week. I know this is actually the hilarious, but the joke of the week. I don't know if you heard that Iran is now everybody's darling. Okay, so they've decided, okay, we're going to just say we're not making any nuclear weapons anymore, and now everything they do is wonderful, and now the oil price is going to go down even further because Iran is going to offload some of its oil to get some money so that they can build more nuclear power stations or whatever they do with enriched uranium. But now, what happens if the president in Iran, the Islamic Republic of Iran, that doesn't have a lot of power. He's a representative. Okay, it's the Ayatollahs who have the same. But he was sent to the Vatican, and the Vatican, they went and covered statues. Now, just in case, I don't know. I don't get this. Anybody who's seen my logo on Skype or somewhere see that I chose the Mona Lisa wearing a burqa, and this is exactly what they did. They put all the statues into burqas, just in case the president of the Islamic Republic of Iran should be offended by seeing a statue with the boobs of a woman. A statue, all right? They didn't put naked women everywhere. No, they were statues. I mean, works of art. And they covered them. I don't know if they had paintings, if they put black bars and drew burqas on the paintings as well. I mean, how do you do this? How do you function in normal life if this is what you think about when someone who comes from a backward ideology out of the 7th century, and you go to the same level? And you go and you say, well, this guy comes from the 7th century. He has the culture and mindset of the 7th century. Does that mean I need to now think the same way? I need to try and put myself into the mind of somebody from the 7th century and cover everything just in case he's offended? What are we doing? And this is crazy. This is absolutely ludicrous that somebody today does this. And why is it that a Muslim can say, well, I don't want to watch nudity. I don't want to see any boobs. I don't want to see any penises. And people cover all 2,000-year-old statues. I mean, these things existed before Muslims came around. And now we need to cover them. We need to change them just because Muslims can't fathom that a woman has boobs. I mean, I don't know. I'm speechless. Okay, let's just come to the video of the week, which was, okay, I don't know how to introduce this. I don't know if people know Britain First. Now, Britain First, no, let me start the other way around. There are groups who are now trying to, let's say, how would you say that they're trying to cash in on the situation that we have it today. So what they're saying is, well, we have a problem with Muslims, we have a problem with refugees, we have a problem with refugees, we have a problem with crime everywhere. What is the cause? And they are identifying that as Muslims. Now, actually, it is. It's that Muslims are not able to do anything with their ideology, that they're not honest with their ideology, they can't handle it, they try and rather censor instead of admitting that there could be some problem areas in the Quran. So they rather shut the people up that show them the problem areas instead of admitting, yes, there are problem areas. So they're trying to cash in on this, and they're saying, well, there's a problem here because the more Muslims come into the country, the worse it's going to get. Instead of saying, well, let's educate them, let's look at solutions, they are making a problem out of this and then using the problem to further their own agenda. And Britain First is one of those groups because now they are like Geert Wilders and Marine Le Pen and there's a lot of people in different countries who are traditional nationalists who are saying that the country should not allow foreigners into the country so that the jobs stay, so that, I mean, they don't see that they have problems already and that allowing other people into the country is not going to exacerbate the problem. I mean, it is going to do so if you don't handle it. But why, I don't quite understand, why are they saying that the number one problem is now people coming into their country? And what Britain First is saying, well, we need the British people to have a life first. So Britain first, and then it's the others. But what they are doing is they're creating like really brilliant propaganda. I must admit this. Like this Jada Franson, this is a 30-ish whatever woman with a huge nose and huge boobs and blah blah, and she's capturing the UK with this slick propaganda. And like Geert Wilders, I mean, he's also doing this. So they propagate this nationalistic sentiment, and what the Britain First people are doing is they're isolating the UK because they're trying to expel Muslims and make Britain into an island again. So what is being propagated is we need to get out of the EU, we need to put up the borders again, we need to do this. They only see the short-term goal. They don't understand the long-term implications and the consequences out of the action. But it's working. This is the problem.
Well, the long-term consequences of not controlling the borders are having the native population replaced, basically. I mean, did you see that video of them walking down, was it Berry Park or something?
That's exactly the video that I'm talking about, how they were being immediately assaulted.
Yeah, I mean, if you reverse the roles of that, if you had some Muslims walking down and Christians coming out and saying, yeah, this is a Christian country, sod off, the Christians, especially if they were white, would be the ones being demonized. But because it's Muslims coming out, it's like, oh, you shouldn't be provoking the Muslims. Well, that's just ridiculous. Well, they're the ones who haven't integrated into British society.
Yeah, but this is what I'm saying. It's working because they know exactly what they're doing. And
yeah, it's working because they're correct.
They are right in that, yes, absolutely. I mean, yes. And that is what I'm saying. It's very slick propaganda. And this is the other thing that they're doing. Because Muslims are now shell-shocked because the usual demand and conquer approach is suddenly met not only with rhetoric, but as well as counter-violence. But suddenly you have Christians carrying a Christian cross running in front of Muslim shops.
But you were saying they weren't seeing the medium or long-term consequences. I mean, what are the sort of negative medium to long-term consequences?
Well, the thing is that if you start producing parts, like for example, I don't know, what can I say? Ford, for example, has factories in the UK. Now, they need dashboards which are produced in Belgium. How do they get there? Well, if they now, at the moment, they say, okay, we've got 1,500 dashboards left, so this is going to last us for another day. Send the next batch now, so that when we have only 50 left, the next ones are going to come, and then we can continue producing Fords. But now with the borders, you can't do that. Because you don't know, you can't calculate exactly how long it's going to take you to get the dashboards from Belgium into the UK, because you have borders again, you have border control. So you could be stuck at the border one day, it could be 3 days, like you had in the past. Well, so all of a sudden, Ford has to now go and change the whole logistics, because suddenly they need to stock more dashboards.
Yeah, but I mean, you negotiate trade agreements, don't you? I mean, that's what you have to do with the rest of the world outside the EU.
Yeah, but for the past 10 years, people have started taking for granted that there are no borders and that they can go and they can plan this way. So the whole, yeah, but it's not only Ford. I mean, it's not only one company. It's everything. The whole commercial aspect of not having borders is going to go down the drain. And then UK is going to be isolated, and companies are going to say, well, yeah, but hang on, I can't plan this, so why should I have my factory in the UK? Then I'd rather go to Belgium, where I have the parts, and the parts, and if I need something from Denmark, if I need something from Spain, they can just ship it. I don't need to wait for borders. Whereas in the UK, I need to wait for the border controls and things like that. So I'd rather not produce in the UK. So they're going to leave the UK.
But I'll take a couple of companies leaving if it means saving British society. Over the Belgians,
You want British society?
throw the society down the toilet. That's fine by me. Just because one or two multinationals, it suits their whim.
I think it goes a lot further than that, because it's not only one company, it's not only the manufacturing, it's also other things. Everything is going to be affected by this. If suddenly you need visas, if suddenly you need border controls, if you suddenly, I mean, the whole planning process is completely different. Like I don't want to go to the States.
You can't just open up the borders and have. I mean, different countries have totally different standards of living, totally different economies. There's a reason why, for the large majority of the history of nation states, they've had borders.
Have you ever exported anything abroad in a lorry, a container? Either of you?
I have, yes.
From what I have, and what I know of it, you have an inspector come to the factory when you've packaged all the goods into the container. He checks to see that you put all the goods you claim you're putting in, and then he seals it up tight, so nobody is allowed to open that container until it gets to the country of destination. So the point of customs is, under the EC, they don't have to do that. They don't have to get an inspector to seal the container. So you're saying that there has to be border controls that will take more time. It's an absolute fallacy. Because if a crate comes over, it's sealed. All they have to do is check the seal. Seal not broken, go straight through.
Okay. If they check the seal, does it mean you have to stop at a border for them to check the seal?
In the EC at the moment, no. They have to stop to check to see if there's any migrants. So any time wasted is done through that.
Okay, so what you are saying, the UK should be leaving the EU and end of the story, finished?
Actually, the way things are going now, yes. England should leave the EC, because it's just falling apart, and it's not just a migrant problem, it's lots of other things that are conspiring to make one of the worst bureaucracies and destructive influences in Europe ever. It's the rise of the old empire, isn't it?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think it's hilarious that you get, like in France, they're saying the Front National are the they're against the Republic, whereas the sort of old guard are the pro-Republicans, which is the other way around. I mean, the people who founded the French Republic would say that the people who want to hand their border controls and sovereignty over to Brussels, they're the ones who are anti-Republic. The Front National are the actual patriots. They're the ones who support the French Republic. And it's basically that way.
I often get asked on the radio, what is the one new law from Brussels that has affected Britain that you can actually quote? Well, I've actually heard one, so I don't know why it's never been spoken. Unilaterally, Brussels said you are not allowed to fish or take bait from around the shoreline of any country.
GP, should we rather talk about fishing now?
No, please, Pam. Now that...
No, you're going way off track. Come on.
Well, it's a demonstration of not Sharia, if you want to bring it back to Muslim.
Okay, I do not see that the whole of Europe should be split up because of Muslims.
I disagree 100% with that. I think that's exactly what you need to do. You need proper border controls.
What, and bring in fiefdoms again?
I mean,
look at what's happened in the last year. It's been a total disaster. You've had mass rape. You've had people not integrating. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Okay, so we've got problems.
Turning up with Brussels and making her own rules when other people in different countries are saying no.
Yeah, but now what you're doing is you're saying, okay, let's all roll up and pretend we're hedgehogs and just
No, we're saying the hedgehogs are the ones in Brussels. The hedgehogs are making these laws without any due consultation with anybody except their anuses.
But Spam, what do you think the Far Eastern countries do to trade with each other? What do the Americas do? I mean, they're not in political union. They don't have completely open borders, do they? I mean, why do you think that the only option is to have totally open borders and basically the United States of Europe? You know, because there are other blocks of countries that manage to trade with each other fine.
Well, I think it's advanced.
Advanced?
Yes.
What do you
And
mean?
America does have border controls. Have you not seen the border controls where they have 5 miles inland that are checking to see if Mexicans have crossed?
It's actually 50 miles, but that doesn't matter. I'm not looking at negative.
You can't say that border controls are going to be a problem in one sense, but not in another sense, when they're actually there regardless, and they are operating, but for different reasons, and they're holding up traffic for different reasons, but they're still holding up traffic.
I'm saying that that progress is having less bureaucracy, less countries, less this, and what I'm seeing is that the countries are maintaining their own bureaucracy and then adding the Brussels bureaucracy on top of that.
But
So
why
it's
is that?
worse.
Why is that necessarily progress? Because it might, different countries have totally different economies and cultures, so it's not always appropriate to just allow complete free movement between them.
I think it's progress to allow free movement between them.
Well, why though? That just sounds like a totally arbitrary definition of progress.
Why?
Well, I thought Magna Carta was progress, but that very law you wouldn't let me talk about was circumcised by that Brussels legislation. It is an Englishman's right to dig up bait offshore. And Brussels says, no, it's
We're
not.
back on fishing now.
It's
Come
just
on, guys.
it's
Are
one
you
law
seriously
of-
saying that every country should now break up into the individual states until you have the individual
they have a
cities
choice.
again, and every city against the rest and for itself?
I don't think they have a choice anymore. There won't be a Europe
Okay,
in a
yes.
few more years' time. Douglas
Okay.
Murray says it will be all gone by about 2020.
I maintain we cannot do that. I maintain that if you go to the States, for example, the United States of America, and you go and you split them up and you say, okay, every state for themselves and then the cities for themselves, the whole thing is going to go back to where it was 500 years ago.
Yeah, but you're taking it to a total extreme. I mean, you can.
Of course I have to. I need to look at the consequences.
It's not one entire world with no borders or every city or whatever for itself. I mean,
Yeah, but that's my
it's
aspiration.
each nation state for itself. Yeah.
Okay, but
So the
why do you
assumption
stop
is that
it?
a nation state has roughly the same culture and the same economy for all the people who live in it. So it's not a massive problem to allow people to travel freely within the nation state, but between different nation states, you've got big differences in the economy and in the culture.
You are saying that again and again and again. I have understood that. I understand that there are cultural differences between the UK and Poland. I understand that. But
And
what
you're
I
absolutely-
don't understand is that anybody should now aspire to having everything cancelled and having everyone for themselves. Every little small area should work individually. I don't think that this is for the benefit of all. I think my aspiration is to go for the bigger. If we have only one administration on the entire planet and everybody goes in the same direction, that would be for me the best goal possible. Now
And
then we can start talking about individual cultural differences. That's cool. But we don't need all the administration, and we don't need all this bickering between countries. Who has a little bit more? Who has a little
You're
bit less? We don't need
talking about a utopia where everyone has a culture that's roughly equal to each other.
There you go. That's my aspiration.
Yeah, but we don't live in that world, so it's an absurd.
America, who has spent billions upon billions of dollars protecting their borders. They do have patrol air helicopters going through the Mexican border to stop their immigration problem.
Yes.
But can you imagine if America had the whole of South America trying to invade? They would build their wall. They
No,
would
that's
not be
not what I'm
voting for
saying.
Donald Trump.
That is not what I am saying. I'm not saying every single country should now immediately open the border. I said my aspiration would be that. It's a long-term goal. And taking the borders away from Europe is one small step in that direction.
But if
Taking away the
America-
borders in
if
the
America
USA
was
is one small
unable,
step.
if America was unable to stop a mass migration of South Americans into America, they would have...
GP, I'm talking inside, not outside.
They would fall, just as much as Europe is falling. They couldn't cope. They
I'm
would be
not
torn
talking
apart.
about... Oh, yes. Am I making myself... Come on. I'm talking about the border between Florida and I don't know, Oklahoma or whatever.
Yeah, I would agree with you on this if it weren't for the fact that the EU is A, anti-democratic, and B, they've completely fucked up the EU's border control and just let massive numbers of immigrants in from much poorer Muslim societies.
Okay,
because the EU is such a total disaster, your point doesn't apply because...
Okay, so now you scratch everything because somebody made a mistake.
Well, many huge mistakes, yes.
Okay, but then you go and fix the mistakes instead of checking everything out.
Well, they're not fixing them. They don't look like they're going to fix them either. I mean, it's fundamentally anti-democratic because no democratic parliament can introduce or cancel EU legislation, and it's a centralised decision-making process for how many migrants they take in, what their asylum policy is going to be.
Okay, all right. That's it. I'm not going to argue my point. I've said what I would like to see. I've said where this is going to go. I've shown the consequences. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I don't think that we should make it dependent on Islam. I don't think that we should make it dependent on some backward political ideology. But that is exactly what is happening. Everybody is now starting to panic because Muslims are coming. This is like in the 50s with communism, where people said, "Oh my God, your commies are coming." Now it's the Muslims.
They're not just coming though, are they? I mean, they're committing like rape and pillage, but virtually pillage, really. I mean, just taking benefits and not really contributing to the economy. It's not like there isn't a real world consequence to it.
It's not like Germany hasn't said you must not report any sort of low-level crime in case of Muslims involved.
Well, okay, you see, now we're doing the right thing. Now we're pointing out the problem areas. Now we're pointing out facts. And now we can go and address those and say, okay, this is what we need to do.
You can't address and change facts if the people who own the system are refusing to even acknowledge the problem.
Sorry, I didn't hear what you said because I was talking.
I said you cannot change anything when people in authority are refusing to acknowledge the problem.
Okay, but you just acknowledged the problem, right?
I acknowledge what was leaked, that the police are being told by the authorities not to arrest anybody who commits a low-level crime because it might be a Muslim migrant.
Okay, can you solve that problem?
No, because...
Okay, so why are you talking about it?
In protest. I'm talking about that problem just like Jeremy is as well, that the leaders have severely let us down. And
okay, we all know that, but you keep on pointing out the
problems. If the leaders have set us down and are refusing to acknowledge the problem, then there is only one way that people in, say, the United Kingdom are going to have a chance to vote, and that is to vote out the leaders. And to do that, we have to vote out Brussels and the EC.
Okay, but that's what you said last week.
Yeah, and I'm saying it again this week. And I'm more convinced of it now than I was last week.
Okay, okay. That's the problem, all right?
And it won't be
so
just
we have the
me
problem.
here.
So what is the solution? You said vote
cases.
them out. Okay, what is the next step?
It'll be the next step, different parts of Europe voting out the EC.
Okay, but now,
you'll have the southern states of Europe, the ones who have said they're putting up borders to protect themselves from people coming in, and who are probably going to be absolutely outraged that Brussels is telling them to take X amount of Muslims into their countries because they have to, because Merkel let them in. Okay,
so what? Merkel is now to blame that Europe is crumbling?
She caused a catastrophe with her statement, "You can all come," because they took her up on the offer. And we have no border checks to find out actually who is coming in. We don't know if these people who are coming in from Africa are part of the ex-Muslim Brotherhood who tried to overthrow Egypt, let alone if they are just normal people.
She didn't stop there. She then goes to talk to Zuckerberg to discuss how they're going to censor Facebook and presumably all the other major social media outlets from people criticising her migrant policy or saying anything that might be deemed as somehow, I don't know, offensive to Muslims or whatever.
Okay.
So it's the end of free speech as well.
So there's a problem in Germany because they let in people who were not actually supposed to be here, and this was a mistake. All right. Now, is anything being done to rectify this?
Not by the EU, apparently, as far as I can tell.
Nothing whatsoever. We've got Cameron trying to negotiate less benefits for so many years.
Okay, you're always going for the UK. Why don't you sort of like open up a little bit and look at Europe? Don't look at only the UK.
Europe
what is
very
happening...
segregated into what is actually released per country. It's very difficult for in England to pick up what's happening in France or Germany. You could consider Jeremy and myself as being the most enlightened Europeans in England because we actually know a little bit about what's going on.
Well, I've seen some videos from truckers going to the Channel Tunnel, and there are literally thousands of migrants hanging around the sort of Calais area, literally walking along the roads trying to break into any lorry they can find to get into the UK illegally, and sort of harassing French people in Calais.
Is that Merkel's fault as well?
Yeah, I mean there's been a long-term problem there, but she's massively added to the problem with the huge influx of Muslim immigrants.
Okay, we've all repeated this 50 million times. We all agree, yes. So that is done. Can we just sort of tick this off and say, yes, a mistake was made? Now, I asked, is there something being done about it? And the answer is yes, because Merkel is doing an about-face. She realizes that she is on the lowest, well, what do you call the polls, whatever you want to call them, the lowest popularity level since, I don't know, since she took office, because of that one mistake that she made. And now she's trying to, limit the damage by doing stupid things once again, by going to Zuckerberg and then forgetting that the microphone is on. But this is not the only thing. There are also real things being done, and there are also things where they are trying to get rid of the people that they let into the country by making it look humane and making it look as though the humanitarian aid is being delivered to those who require it, and those who don't require it are being sent back. But even that is not working.
No, but with regards to the Facebook Zuckerberg thing, it's not a good solution to ban free speech, is it?
No, it's not. Absolutely not. No.
So so a lot of the things she's doing to quote unquote fix the mistake are just making it even worse.
Stupid. Absolutely, I agree. Everybody agrees with you, but the only thing that I don't agree with is now to say, okay, oh my God, she's made a mistake. Okay, lock it up. Everything is gone. Open up. The 20. When was it? When did everything happen? 1998 and then 2000 and something. Then this was done. Just open up the coffers and bring back all the barriers and whatever was locked up and locked away. Let's bring the borders back. No, come on. You need to think logically. You need to think rationally. You need to think, okay, what are the repercussions? What are the consequences of doing that? Yes, mistakes have been made. Fucking out loud. Yes, they have been made. Come on. Okay, so we've made mistakes, and now we don't need to repeat them again, and we need to learn from the mistakes that were made. And that is the point. Now, instead of saying, okay, UK now has to leave the European Union, I mean, is it going to change anything? No, you're still going to have people in Calais hanging on to trucks trying to get into the UK. So that's not gonna change.
Yeah, but I think you're being utopian in the idea that the EU can really reform, because it's, as I said before, it's anti-democratic. There isn't. It was designed from the beginning to get rid of democratic nation states, centralise power, and basically have a bureaucracy that's undemocratic.
I don't want to go back.
You want to move forward towards a less democratic or an undemocratic centralised bureaucracy.
Correct. I don't care for democracy. I think democracy is a failure.
Well, I might agree with something like a selective suffrage, but I don't see how a completely unelected bureaucracy can be better.
Well, I don't care. I don't really. Okay, I don't have all the solutions. I'm just saying I don't think that we should go now and chuck the baby out with the water and say, okay, everything needs to be reversed. Everything needs to be, everything that we've done in the last 10, 15 years should go down the drain, and let's put all the borders back up. Let's re-erect the Iron Curtain for that, man. I don't think we should do that. I think we've worked hard to arrive where we are today, and now to chuck everything out. Well, let's get done with human rights. Do exactly what Merkel is saying, and that is now suddenly curb free speech. Women go to work. No, what for? They should go and take care of the babies. That doesn't work. So why are you
equating the assertion of nation states existing with doing away with human rights?
Because that's the next step. I'm just looking at progress over the last 500 years. I see the suffragettes.
No, you've got two totally separate issues. You've got open borders and centralised government, and then you've got human rights. I mean, it's two totally separate issues.
Yeah,
but
why
we've
are
taken
people
religion and taken it out
going to bring in the thing that they are trying to escape from? You're talking oxymoron.
Sorry, you were talking while I was talking, so I didn't hear what you said.
You are saying that Europe stands for things which they are trying to destroy, and the people who wish to leave, who wish to preserve things like emancipation and suffrage, so they want to leave Europe, are the ones who are going to bring it back. That is an oxymoron.
No, what I'm saying is if we go back to erecting borders. If we go back
to erecting borders, you're going to make shall we say, your utopia actually be a bit more likely to survive in a smaller country than it is going to be in a nation of nations trying to destroy it.
No, I don't see that at all. I see a utopia where we have one administration without all the individual, this nitpicking that you have at the moment. Where Switzerland says, no, we can't have that. Where Monte Carlo says, no, we can't have that. Then France goes and does that. And then Russia says something different. The UK...
One Führer, one land, one Reich.
This needs to stop. That's my utopia, where we don't have this...
Ein Reich, ein Volk, ein Führer. Führer Merkel.
Yeah.
So this is why I'm saying get rid of all the Merkels and get rid of the people who rationalize things, who don't go out of an emotion and say, well, let my babies come or let the people in or whatever, but they say, well, hang on a minute, let's first think about this before we take any rash decisions. Let's first put them into border, I don't know, some control units, and let's think about this. Let's give the humanitarian what is necessary. Let's go put them on the island for the time being, and then decide what we're going to do about it instead of taking stupid decisions now, which we're going to be sorry for later.
If you're going to bring in an island into it, stop. Where is this island? Atlantis?
No,
name an island.
There was an Egyptian billionaire who suggested to put all the...
Name one. Name it.
Can I talk? Did you hear about the Egyptian billionaire who suggested...
I'm not looking for theories. I want a name of an island.
Come on. If I say something, can you at least please let me finish?
I want a name of an island. Please answer the question.
What question should I answer?
Name me the island you want to put as the meeting place, where you're going to send all these immigrants to. I want the name of the island.
The name... Jabiristan.
Right, let's see if I can find that on the Google map.
No, you can't, because it never materialized. This is why...
Oh, so you can't do it. Is that what you're telling me?
I can't hear you when you are talking. When I'm talking, I can't hear what you are saying.
If you haven't got a name of an island, you haven't got a plan.
Oh, really? No, that's...
No, you haven't. You've just got a theory. You've got an idea. You've got a wistful dream. A dream that cannot come true because you haven't got a real place to put them. So you need to name that island. Australia had an island. They are able to name it. You don't have an island. You can't have it.
Okay, I disagree.
What was the Australian island?
No, I think he's talking about Australia.
Yeah, what was their island?
No, Australia is the island.
Yeah, but isn't GPZ saying that Australia had an island, another island?
They do have an island where they put all the refugees.
You don't know the name of it, though?
I'm looking it up now.
It's not Tasmania, is it?
No.
Okay.
It's in
I
a
think there
number
was
of
a plan.
instances.
I think this is what the people should have done. They should have pursued this. They should have gone further with this instead of rejecting it and saying, okay, let everybody in. There are alternatives, and there should have been alternatives, and they should have taken the alternatives. Instead of now submitting to
Manocide and
Islam,
region and
GP, you're
narrow.
doing it again. Come on. I'm just formulating a thought. Don't just barge in, because then you can't be heard. I can't be heard. I don't know what is going on. Come on. I mean, up until now, this has always worked. We don't need to do this now. I understand that you are emotionally attached to this. Yes, fine. But come on. I mean, you know. Now, if we had gone and said, all right, let's just go and process this rationally, then we wouldn't be submitting to Islam, which is what we're doing at the moment. At the moment, we are saying Islam has won, and we are submitting to Islam. We're going to go back into what was happening 15 years ago, 20 years ago. We're going to abandon all the nice plans that we had. We're going to go back and let Islam go and dominate this planet. And that's what I do not agree with, and I will not accept. That's it. Are there alternatives? Yes, there are alternatives. And that's exactly what I'm trying to say. We don't have to submit to this. Now, is there anybody with a different idea, instead of just saying, no, there's no name, and that's what, come on, that's not rational.
I didn't quite get your point about Islam dominating the planet or something.
Well, at the moment, Islam is dominating Europe, because everybody is saying, well, we need to stop Europe, everything needs to be abandoned, we need to put the borders back up, because Islam is being naughty. So Islam is being naughty, and therefore we need to pander to Islam, and we need to put up the borders.
Well, that's not pandering to Islam, that's doing the opposite, isn't it?
No, we are doing exactly what Islam wants.
I thought ISIS wanted to flood Europe with as many Muslims as possible and Islamize the continent.
And that's what we're doing.
But putting the borders up would make that much more difficult.
No, it wouldn't. How so?
Because you're able to have, well, you're able. The individual nation states are able to assert border control that the EU refuses to do at the moment, evidently.
So what's the difference?
They can block people coming in, and they
The difference is the nation states would actually probably do it, whereas the EU isn't, for whatever reason.
What is the EU not doing?
Not controlling its borders. It's just letting huge numbers of people in.
Okay. We said this. Yes, this was a mistake. All right. Are we going to make the same mistake again? No.
Well, it's not. It's a mistake that they're continuing to make. They don't seem to have recognised that it's a mistake.
They have recognized it's a mistake. At the moment, this is exactly what is happening. They are sending back boats.
Have you heard what you say? You know that I think it's Sweden is planning to send back 80,000 refugees.
Yeah.
Have you heard that some of the cases in the UK where people have been trying to send back people who are foreign immigrants, illegal immigrants?
No.
And the courts have said, no, you cannot send that person back. He has a domestic life. He has a cat.
Okay, is that a
He has a
problem of
cat.
the EU now?
Yes, it was the EU who ruled that it was against his human rights to be deported because he had a cat and a family life with a cat. A domestic cat, for God's sake.
Now, are you going to chastise me for not believing that?
You don't have to believe it or not, it actually happened. That's
Because
why
I
people are
find it very
furious.
hard to believe it.
Yeah, it happened. That's why people are absolutely furious of Brussels' involvement in some of the cases of the UK when it comes to foreign migrants.
Now,
They're coming out with the most absurd human rights justifications.
Okay, I agree with you. I agree with you that this is absurd.
Well, if you
I
agree
agree
with
that
me,
this is the most stupid thing that you can do.
If you agree with me, then you know full well that Sweden is going to have a hell of a job trying to deport 80,000 people if they all happen to go and get domestic cats.
Yeah, there you go. So, yes, there is a problem. Is that something that can be fixed? Absolutely.
How?
But now, what I'm trying to get to...
But how? How can you fix it when the people who are saying these things are the people in charge? The people in charge are the ones saying you can't send them home because they got domestic cats. What are you going to do, fire them all? How? The people who employ those believe in the idea that they got domestic cats and shouldn't be deported. The system is rotten from the top downwards.
Okay, have you written to your representative and told him to go and write to the representative in Brussels?
Protested and written, and it gets mostly ignored.
How do you know that?
Because of the replies you don't get back.
Okay.
Legally, they should reply to every letter and email ever sent to them.
I quite like the argument from one of the arguments from the In campaign, which is that the UK has influence in the EU because 1 in 10 MEPs is a British one. So wow, if we managed to get every single one of our MEPs to vote the same way, we'd have 10% of the vote.
Exactly. That is the way to do it. Use the system. That's what
10% is pitiful.
Using the system.
10% is not going to get you anywhere, is it?
10% is going to get you somewhere. Absolutely. Come on. Britain is one of the biggest contributors to the EU.
10% is pitiful, and that's just in the European Parliament that can't introduce or cancel legislation. It's kind of a talking shop, really.
Yeah, but you're not. Come on. Do you think that if the UK is going to go and say, listen, we need to do something about this, do you think that all the other European countries, all the other members of the European Parliament are going to say, no, we're going to be against the UK? No, it's ridiculous to go and say, if this is really true, let's say this is true, okay? Let's say that some judge has said, well, there's a domestic problem here because they are integrated, they've even got a cat. I mean, as ludicrous as that may be, but if that is going to be the basis, there's something wrong. So then we need to go and we need to address that, and we need to change it. And now we need to find out how we can address that and how we can change that. But now saying, okay, everybody needs to go back home, come on, roll down the shutters and everybody buy a gun, that is not going to work in my eyes.
David Cameron wanted to have a deal where, I mean, it's a pathetically weak deal anyway, where he didn't give any benefits, or the UK didn't give any benefits to EU migrants for 4 years. Even that's been rejected because countries like Poland don't want it. So he's coming up with this ridiculous emergency brake, which is going to be completely ineffectual. So that's how easy it is to get agreement in the European Union.
And do you know what one of the pro people who stayed in Europe's biggest... she's one of the biggest proponents for staying into Europe. She actually was caught doing a scandal faking people's signatures of businessmen to try and stay into Europe.
Oh, GP, come on.
You know what she did? The reason why she wants to stay into Europe is because she would find it harder to hire footballers in Europe.
Okay, great. Now,
great.
The point that I was
got a lot of money
make,
pumping politicians for her to get more footballers. What chance has Jeremy or I got in a purse against that?
You don't. People like Anjem Chowdhury, who are used to getting away with anything in the British political correctness environment, are suddenly faced with Britain first. And they are suddenly in a position where they have to run away and hide. So it's not Muslims who are being aggressive, but it's now Britain first who's teaching Muslims that they can't do and they can't get away with everything. They can't do what they want and they can't get away with everything. And even mosques are not a safe haven anymore. As members of the Britain First, I don't know what they are. Are they a party? Is Britain First a party by now? Or is it just a movement?
It's just a movement.
It's a movement. They will follow hate preachers into a mosque and then go and ask them, what are you doing? And confront them with their hateful propaganda while capturing these activities on video. And this is why I came to this, because of the video of the week. Because I thought, this is actually brilliant. Yes, it's right-wing. Yes, it's propaganda. Yes, it's bad and blah, blah, blah. But at the moment, this is exactly what we want. This is exactly what we need to show people what is going on. Because what they are doing in their videos, they're saying this person said this and this about women, about stoning, about bombers, about this and this, and then saying, listen, you said this. What is your comment today? And this is brilliant. This is
but the establishment is already started to destroy movements like British First. Now, I don't particularly like British First because I think they are basically...
That's not my point. My point
is, if you'd let me finish...
I don't want to talk about Britain First as being a political movement.
Recently had an anti-immigration movement against Muslims, and it's all been anti-fascist being attacked by people like British First.
Okay, I'm talking about the propaganda that Britain First is, is doing the actions that they're doing in a video.
GPZ, what did you said you thought Britain First was basically what?
A militant group, a bunch of thugs.
Well, they don't seem that militant. I mean, they seem to be.
The guy thinks he's part of the paramilitary. He bought himself an army truck, an army Land Rover, and reinforced it, for God's sake.
Yeah, but are they physically attacking people? Or are they defending themselves?
They're getting in their faces and acting aggressive, and then people lose their temper and strike back.
That's not what in the videos. It looks like they are the ones being attacked.
Yes, it would do, because you see their videos being edited to portray what they are suffering, but you don't see the lot of preamble of them trying to aggravate and make people angry, so they lash out.
Well, I watched a video where somebody is saying, I'm going to expose Britain First, and they don't. So I would imagine that somebody who wants to expose Britain First is going to show exactly that, but they didn't.
I basically, the footage I saw looked relatively unedited, and the Britain First is sort of yelling out to the Muslims Muhammad was a paedophile, and you can just see the emotional, sort of visceral reaction from these Muslims. I don't think it takes that much stoking to get them to try and physically attack you.
No, it doesn't. But they are doing the provoking. They are poking sticks.
Yeah, but it's
poke a stick at a bear.
I mean, the Muslims, if they can't accept free speech, then they're the ones who've got the problem. They're the ones who've got to fit into a society that says free speech should be a right.
And now we're back where I want to be. That is exactly the point that I'm trying to make, because now what they are doing is they are turning the tables. They are doing exactly the same thing. And this is why I think this is so brilliant, because what they're doing is they're trying to suddenly get a Muslim protected zone using non-Sharia patrol. They are saying you're not allowed to walk. If you're a man, you're not allowed to wear a dress. This is quite funny. And this is, for me, this is sheer marketing brilliance. Okay, the threat of Sharia versus a British court is great propaganda, and it works. And then, I mean, let's be realistic. The primitive masses, and you do get them, are thrilled at this and see the action they would love to see taken by the government, because the government is being seen as politically correct, and now Britain First is telling them this is what you should be doing. And now, instead of the government doing something, they see more and more burqas and men wearing skirts and dresses, with these long beards, and that's sinister. So I feel for them. And now what is happening is Britain First is coming along and saying, no, we don't need to tolerate this. No, we can do something about this. And they are showing the government what this should look like. They're showing them the reality. So the British First, Britain First, with figureheads, what was her name again? Jada Franson and Paul Golding. And Paul Golding runs around in a suit, okay? He's got these heavy bodyguards, these discotheque bouncers and so on. So they will carry crosses, Christian crosses, and cite Jesus as the true British God, and suddenly the Church of England becomes the religion of choice, just trying to aggravate Muslims. And then they very loudly march into a Muslim-controlled area and get away with it because they've got these heavy muscle bouncers with them, and then Muslims will, just leave them alone, and suddenly you have cops looking after Britain First because they are right-wing. And I think they're wrong, okay? They are wrong from a political point of view, but they are showing everybody that you do not have to just lie down, roll over, and take it. You can go and do something about it. And that is actually the only thing that I wanted to talk about today.
How come they're wrong from a political point of view?
Because, okay, I call them fascists. I call them racists. I call them whatever. They're saying, no, we're not racist. And because people have asked them the one question which I think is incredibly important, and that is, what happens if a Pakistani Christian comes to the UK? Is he going to be welcome? And this is where the problem comes in, because now they're paying lip service. They say, yeah, of course, a Pakistani Christian is fine. It's just the backward Muslims that we don't want here. But as soon as they see a Pakistani, they will go and go into the standard rhetoric. They will not care whether or not that person is a Muslim or a Christian. So,
well, maybe that's because like 99.99% of them are Muslims.
Okay, okay, maybe it's the wrong.
So it's pragmatically a pretty reliable assumption.
Is Lebanese better?
Well, yeah, if it's Lebanese Christian, then I'm guessing they wouldn't have a problem with them,
Okay,
really.
scratch Pakistani, insert Lebanese.
So you think that they'd have a problem with Lebanese Christians?
They would have a problem because they're Lebanese, not because they're Christians.
I don't think they would. I think as long as they're integrating, I don't think they'd have a problem with them.
Okay, how many people who are not white do you see marching with them?
Not many, but I'm guessing minorities generally. I'm guessing. Well, for one thing, the kind of areas that Britain first come from are white majority areas anyway, aren't they?
Yeah. Okay, but now let me ask you a question. What they are doing and I'm talking only about propaganda now. Do you see that this can make an impact? Can you see that people are realizing that there's a problem, that you can do something about it, and that the government has to start addressing this?
Well, what worries me is that the government's going to address it in the wrong way. They're going to go down the route that they have for the last 15, 20 years and try and shut them up and demonize them.
That is wrong, don't you think?
Sorry?
Don't they think that they have realized by now that that is wrong?
No, not really. I mean, Cameron's, well, you've still got them saying that virtually any criticism of Islam is Islamophobia. I mean, okay, they're starting to slightly budge a little bit, but it still seems a bit... Cameron seems to me like an Islamophile, as do most of our major politicians.
So what would Thatcher say?
I've got no idea what Thatcher would say. It wasn't an issue in her day.
She's the hardliner, isn't it?
It wasn't anything like it as much of an issue in her day. You didn't have mass migration from Middle East and Africa.
She had solutions for everything, I think.
I know what Churchill said, and Churchill was scathing about Islam.
Yeah.
He said that the human race wouldn't reach its full potential until the religion was gone.
Did you see the guy who was reciting a speech and he got arrested?
Yeah, the Churchill.
Yeah, the Churchill speech. And the British police arrested him, and he says, "Hang on, you stupid dodos, this is my Churchill. I'm not even allowed to quote Winston Churchill now." And they said, "No, you weren't." He says, "Yes." And he showed them, "Listen, this is it. This is Churchill's speech. I was just quoting Churchill, and you arrest me for quoting Churchill." They were left with egg on their faces on that one.
But Churchill would absolutely be seen as sort of far right by modern politics. The mainstream today. It's moved so far left.
Yeah.
I think Churchill today would not get very far in politics, sadly.
But then let me repeat my question. Do you think that what Britain First is doing today is an eye-opener for people?
Probably for some people, yeah. But they're also, and this is probably unavoidable, ammunition for the BBC and other left-wing propaganda outfits to demonize them because, they hate all brown people. They completely mischaracterize them.
Well, the BBC guy who was trying to do exactly that was chucked out. He was shunned because they realized that he was looking to misrepresent them. So they said, "Listen, fuck off." And he could not get a word in edgewise because he was trying to misrepresent them. So I think that was very well handled. I mean, come on. I mean, I think it's brilliant what they're doing, that they're taking action, that they are opening people's eyes. The negative thing is that people don't think far enough to understand that, yes, you can do that for a certain amount of time, but you can't go doing this forever and ever. Amen. This is the problem.
Right. Thatcher. I looked up what she might say, and I've put it as quotes. Margaret Thatcher gave her approval to British mercenaries working in Ugandan Parliament during the bloodiest human rights abuses in East Africa during the Idi Amin years. Thatcher also approved of South African apartheid. Does that give you an idea of what she would have thought?
No, I wouldn't. No, I wasn't aware of that.
She would have been pro getting rid of the Muslims.
Yeah, but okay, but would she have a solution? Not just pro or contra, but would she have a solution?
I don't know. Back in those days, England was working under the principle of what Merkel is working under now. They were bringing in lots of migrants to try and devalue
No,
the.
no, no, that's not the point. That's not the point.
It is the point.
I'm trying to make. Is there a solution to the problem? Because we have a problem. This is not a crisis, okay? A crisis is something that you can sit out. This you can't sit out. You have to do something. And this is what I'm saying. We have a problem here. So how can you address the problem? This is what I'm trying to find out what people are thinking about this.
Well, I suppose possibly the solution will have to be, as they're doing at the moment, building up the fences, building up the guards, not bringing them into Europe, deporting them as they can and wherever they can get them into.
Okay, how about supporting reform of Islam?
That can be a long-term situation, but as I was trying to bring in the beginning of the program, with that big questions program this morning, how do you make a British Muslim? And some of the audience were absolutely adamant, you can't question Islam. That's basically what they were saying, weren't they? That woman in the face coverings and her imam next to her.
You do realise that the big questions is just the BBC giving religious nutcases a platform.
Yes, and boy, did they demonstrate it quite well. When the man from Quilliam asked the imam, do you believe in the death of apostates? It took over 10 minutes before the guy actually said, no, I don't. He went out of his way not to say anything for ages.
Yeah, but that's the way it works with... Okay, but now, what is the problem that we have? It's not immigration. The problem that we have is immigration by people who have a different political ideology who want to take us back to the 7th century. Is that the problem, yes or no?
It is totally the problem. It's not the people. It really is not.
In the UK, there is also the problem of sheer numbers as well. I mean, 350,000 net per year. So that needs to come down enormously.
We do have problems where a man recently in England was killed for sleeping rough. A white man, not a Muslim. So if we got problems with white people being killed, what makes you think it's going to be better for a Muslim? It's not. It's just going to be equally as worse. If not worse.
What is the problem?
The problem is a lack of housing because your wonderful Thatcher decided to sell off the private stock of or the public stock of housing.
Yeah, but it's not just
fishing again. Come on, these are different problems.
It's got it doesn't matter what you do with the housing. If you've got 350,000 extra people to house per year, you're going to have problems, aren't you?
You're going to have massive problems, especially when you're not even coping with the already increasing...
But guys, we are not discussing UK housing problems.
It's probably the same in Europe. Where the heck are they housing all these people?
Okay, so we have people coming to Europe. This is the problem. The problem, no, that is not the problem, sorry. The fact that we have people coming to Europe when the European population is decreasing is not going to be a huge problem.
Yes, it is. It's going to replace the European demographic.
Okay, now we're talking about a totally different issue. Now we're not talking about the people, but we're talking about the ideology. And that is where we should be going. I think we should not be talking about, oh God, we have 15 people from a different country coming here. We should be looking at what the impact is, what the consequences are. Instead of just looking at the apparent problem, we should look at the real problem. And I think the apparent problem is that 5 or 10 people are going to join us in the city, or maybe 100, or maybe even 1,000. But the problem is that these 1,000 people can then go to the main station and go and rape girls. And that is a totally different area. And I think that is the area we should be addressing. Where does that come from? Why do we suddenly have 1,000 people attacking girls in the main square? Why is that happening? And this is the problem that we should be addressing. Not that we are missing houses. Houses can be built, but you cannot change stupid ideas overnight. And that is why I think we should have a plan. We should start talking about how to get the politicians to understand the problem.
Well, houses can't be built indefinitely because you run out of space. Or if you want to be someone who lives in a rural area that's got a low population density, you're screwed because everything has to turn into a huge city to house the vast numbers of people flooding into the country.
And how you can't build in the
whole planet sitting in the UK.
Sorry?
You're not going to have the whole planet sitting in the UK.
Well, with no, but you're going to get. That's why we need to control immigration in the UK because of the sheer numbers. That was that point that I was making. You can build houses, but you're going to.
Okay, fine. Yes, I understand that. Granted, you can have some sort of selection process like Australia is doing, where you need to have certain criteria before you are allowed in the country. Granted, absolutely. Next, how do you address the ideology, though? How do you do that? Because look, Denmark, same problem. What happened? A girl gets fined, or she has to go to court because a guy came and pulled down her pants, and she defended herself, and now she has to go to court because she defended herself. That is what we need to address. That is where we need to say, okay, listen, guys, we need to find a solution to stupidity, because it's stupid to take a 17-year-old girl to court who defended herself against something.
Again, it seems to me.
Excuse me, Spam. What happened in Denmark? What exactly happened?
That's all I have.
It seems to me to be a symptom of the same problem. Your utopian idea that that we don't need borders because it would be nice. It would be nice if all the societies were the same, roughly. It's the same sort of thing. These laws.
Well, that's what we're going to.
She's being prosecuted because the assumption seems to be that she was being unreasonable in attacking the man or something.
No, she was.
Again, it's an assumption. It's an assumption that all cultures are the same, basically, and all people are reasonable by our standards, and that's just a utopian assumption.
Correct. But I think, okay, what I observe is that 500 years ago, we started mingling. And what this mingling has resulted in is a huge development surge, because different cultures, different ideologies, different thoughts, different approaches have helped the others. So in other words, the teamwork consisting of different groups, different cultures, this has resulted in what we see today, that in the last 500 years we've made this huge jump, more than what we have in the 50,000 years before that. And this is, I think, due to the I don't know, the artificial insemination, or whatever you want to call that, of different ideas and different people, different approaches. And this is why today, if we're looking at internet, if we're looking at television, if we're looking at media, if we're looking at information and communication, we are looking at a harmonization process. And that is what is happening. Because if I look at the differences between an Australian and an American, Canadian, Norwegian, blah, blah, they are small compared to the differences that we saw within those groups, like maybe even 200 years ago. So what I'm seeing is the trend that we are going towards a harmonization. So even a place like Dubai or Abu Dhabi, blah, 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 they are now following the progress that other countries have made. They are aspiring towards this. Russia failed, the whole thing collapsed, aspiring to the same goals. China collapsed, same thing, aspiring to the same goals. So I'm seeing these trends, and I'm saying, okay, this is where we're going towards, and what are the consequences? And this is why I have built my, what you call utopia, based on the trends that I observe today.
Why am I seeing a trend of videos of Muslim men and women having a shit in public?
Sorry, I didn't hear you because two of you were talking at the same time.
I'm saying, why am I seeing a trend of videos of Muslim men and women having a shit in public? This is in Europe, not in England.
Okay, I haven't seen that. I don't know.
Maybe you should look for it, and then explain why Americans and British and other westernized nations 300 years ago couldn't be spotted in their differences. But I don't imagine you would ever see an American, a British or Westerner 300 years ago just walking and having a shit in the street or in a hospital.
Mind you, I was in a place called Alexanderplatz, and I saw a guy, and probably homeless, I don't know, but he was like European. I don't know whether he was German or what he was. But he just pulled down his pants and had a pee in the middle of the square. He couldn't give a shit. He just had a pee there. So I see this from non-Muslims as well. So it's not, I mean, Come on, what are we doing? Are we looking at one person now? He doesn't know what we're talking about. The big picture here. I'm talking about the concept of a girl having to go and defend herself because she defended herself. And this is crazy. The same thing in Sweden. I heard that there was a young girl, a social worker, she was stabbed, and then all hell broke loose because now suddenly you have Muslims occupying a station in Copenhagen, or no, where was it? Stockholm? I can't remember. Was it Sweden? I can't remember now. So this is crazy. And then,
the thing is, in Denmark, it sounds weird. I mean, in Sweden, I think it was a 22-year-old woman. She worked alone and she was killed.
Was this in Sweden? I can't remember where.
Yeah, that was in Sweden. But the Denmark story, I haven't heard. It sounds weird because you are allowed to defend yourself. If he really did what, if he.
Well, the cops say she's not allowed to. She's not allowed to carry pepper spray.
Aha, okay. She had. Okay. Then I understand. She had a weapon. She had a weapon, and that's the problem. Not because she defended herself. Yeah, that's not good. But that's I think the crime is against what's called like weapon law, illegal weapon use or something like that. But it's not the defending itself.
I had a daughter, I would give her pepper spray.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, women especially. I mean, I'm not a fan of like having like special laws for different groups, but women, I mean, it's like they say in the US, weapons are an equalizer. And that's true. I think young girls should have special laws.
Okay, but I don't think that somebody who's defending themselves should be in any way incriminated. I mean, in South Africa, in South Africa it says if you go into a house, you have to expect that you will be incurring some sort of damage. And that is it. And they don't care whether it's a man or a woman. If you burgle a house and somebody finds you and you get shot, well, tough shit. And then on the other hand, they took somebody to court because he was a painter and he kept turpentine in his cubbyhole, and a thief stole his car, took a swag from the bottle, and ran the car off the road, killed himself, and the guy had to go to jail because he put turpentine into his cubbyhole and didn't mark it. Danger, do not drink, this contains turpentine. In case you steal my car, do not drink from this bottle. Crazy. Okay, next topic. Muslims in public. I labeled this Muslims in public, and I was going to talk about the big questions because I think last week there was a female Muslim from a Muslim organization. I don't know why Muslims always need this representation. I don't know why Muslims need these cares and councils, and I don't know what they have. And she, and this is national television, all right? She seriously claimed Earth was egg-shaped because scientists have recently found out, and we have come to know, that Earth is egg-shaped. And this was mentioned 1400 years ago in the Qur'an. Now, come on, how can anybody be so stupid? I mean, if you look, today's 2016, I think, all right? If you subtract 1400 from that, you're left in 616, sorry. So if you take 616, what happened in 616? Was the Quran even finished? No, it was not. So how the fuck can you say it's in the Quran?
I want to ask the Quranic scientists, given that the Quran gave us all the information we have today, Raven's making noise, can I mute him? Yeah. Given that the Quran's got all the information that we have today, why weren't they building planes and space probes? Were they just choosing not to do so?
Yeah, but the thing is, what is even worse, I mean, she's using this dahaha, a verb, all right? Daha means to spread out, and ha it, so spread it out. So God spread it out is a verb, and that is dahaha. But if you want to put an egg in there somehow, then you need to verb it. So it's like Allah egged earth. how does any of this make any sense?
That, oh my goodness. That's why you should learn Arabic, so you can see this for yourself. Read all the tafsir that is like older than.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
mean, that's such a bullshit. Such a bullshit.
But this woman is a representative of a Muslim organization, and she's on national television telling people that Tahaha means it's Allah egged the earth. Why? This is on exactly this big questions. How embarrassing is this? Ah. Okay, I found this and I thought this is hilarious. Actually, I haven't watched today's show yet. I watched this from 2 weeks ago, and I found this. And I don't know if I should make a video on this to show how somebody in the 21st century, in 2016, goes on national television in the UK and goes and represents Muslims, saying that her God, and she maintains that her God egged Earth. No, this is... let me see if I can put this here, because this is so nice, and I have somewhere. Did I put the photo here? No, I didn't. Here. Okay, let me see if I can put this here and if I can share this. Jinx. Why doesn't... Ah, yes. I hate Microsoft. Why can't I share this? Share this. Okay, can everybody see this?
No. Oh, I can now, yeah.
Let me put this on F, full screen. No, hang on, I need to go here and full screen. Now can you see it?
Yeah. Saudi Arabia keeps the oil flowing.
Now don't talk. Shit, I need to put myself on. There you go. What happened, this is in Pakistan. The New York Times in Pakistan was missing the photo on the front page because there was an article about couples testing like gay marriage in China. And they put two guys kissing on this bridge, and in Pakistan this was too much for the people to handle. So they went and deleted the photo on the New York Times. And I thought this is so funny that they go and do something stupid like this.
You know what? The very interesting thing is, I think it was Pakistan. I don't know if they arranged it or they were involved in it, but recently they've decided to like hold this international conference in Morocco, which is based on the contract of Medina. And the whole basis of it is to have for like mullahs and imams and sheikhs and whatnot to discuss the protection of, I think, religious minorities in Muslim majority countries. So I would just love to see something like, I don't know, like in Muslim majority countries, like someone just creates a new religion, like some kind of homosexual religion. I'd love to see how that played out.
A homosexual. Well, this is what I suggested, that I expose my left nipple, and then my wife and me, we come to Dubai, both with our left nipples exposed, and we say it's a religious requirement to have our left nipples exposed, exactly like that.
That's the flying spaghetti monster religion, isn't it? Like the pirate costume with left nipple exposed.
Something like that, yeah, exactly. And then see their reaction to see how tolerant they are towards other religions, exactly what you said. You know. Okay, then I have President Obama. Now, what can I say about President Obama? What would I be able to say about President Obama in connection with Islam? Well, he's supposed to visit a mosque next week. And this is now the big boo-ha in the US, because he is to stress the importance of religious freedom in the USA and to celebrate the contributions of Muslim Americans, sorry. Now, number one, why would a president have to go to a mosque to stress religious freedom? I mean, he is the representative of the USA, which is not allowed to condone a particular religion. So he should do his utmost to stay out of church and to stay out of mosques and temples and any religious place, because he's not allowed to.
Did he decide to do this mosque visit before or after Megyn Kelly's question?
This I don't know. I don't know Megyn Kelly's question.
Her question to the GOP candidates was, what would you do if you saw people suspiciously moving parcels into a house? Would you report them to the police if they were Muslims?
How do you know if somebody's a Muslim?
It was Megyn Kelly's question. She was referring to the San Bernardino Muslims who went on a rampage, the man and wife. They were getting lots of parcels delivered to their houses, and there were no Muslims. And she was basically saying, if they lived next door to you, would you report them to the police?
Well, how are you supposed to do that? I mean, this is called prior restraint. You can't go and just go on a whim, go and say, well, I think I know what they're going to do, so I'm going to go and arrest them.
Yeah, well, Megyn Kelly's from Fox News and obviously has her own biases. But the thing is Obama going to a mosque because Megyn Kelly was stirring up anti-Muslim bigotry?
I do not know. I just find it weird that a president should do something like this. And of course, there's this guy, and now I forgot his name. I should have written it down. Normally I remember these things. I don't know. He has a blog, and he maintains that this mosque that Obama is visiting had an imam. In other words, this mosque is associated with an imam who used to lead prayers there a couple of years ago, and he was the one who condoned suicide bombings. So it's not only politically incorrect for a US president to go and propagate a particular religion, you also go into a mosque which apparently had somebody in there who did not contribute to the USA as a Muslim American. So I don't know what kind of a contribution did any Muslim American? I mean, what Muslim contributions? Why should a Muslim contribute something different than a Jew or a Hindu or a Sikh? What is it? Why should you celebrate Muslim contributions? I don't understand.
Maybe you're expecting
the really
an
funny thing about that is that ironically.
Sorry, there's two people talking at the same time.
Sorry, GP, did you just want to finish what you were saying?
Yeah, I was just saying maybe he's getting a little donation from 1001 Inventions.
Yeah. And Raven?
The ironic thing is that it's been in the papers earlier this month that apparently America is actually stopping Muslims from legally visiting the US.
I thought that was only a suggestion.
Well, they're doing it.
Well, no, I don't know how true it is, but it's been popping up earlier this month in UK papers that British Muslims are being met at the airport, not at the American airport, but before they get on their flights, by American Homeland Security and being turned away. There was the last case that I was reading about. It was this bloke called Mohammed something. He was a taxi driver, and his brother, and I think like 11 of their kids, like his kids and.
Oh, we did this a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, did you? Yeah, but I find it very ironic. But I suppose that's like within the continental US borders rather than outside, so different thing, I guess.
Yeah, they took them out of the waiting queue.
With those two brothers, they were linked with the fact they were going to the same mosque as the mass shooters were members of, and that was a bit of a no-no. That was very suspect. But
you're about the Californian mass shooters, because I'm talking about like people in the UK.
No, I'm talking about the two brothers. The two brothers who were going to go over.
Yeah,
they were going to see a third brother who attended that very same mosque, which the two killers used to go to. So that raised some flags. But You are right in other situations because though that couple happened a while ago, there have been other British Muslims since then who have been denied access to planes for exactly the same unknown reasons. They're just not getting told why the US are refusing them.
Yeah, well, because it's interesting that you say about the brother. I remember when I first read the news story, thinking it was kind of weird. But they did say that they had family in the US, and I remember wondering at the time. I wonder if like their American relations have some kind of connection, known or unknown. So that actually makes sense what you're saying. It fills in a lot of gaps.
Yeah, but they should have let them know. I mean, it was only because of the investigative journalists discovered it and then let us, the public, know. The Americans weren't telling them. I mean, if you're going to commit a crime or if you're going to be a suspect of things, I think the governments, the authorities, should let you know why they've decided to refuse you access.
That's kind of a slippery slope, though, isn't it? Because it's just, it's kind of suspicion by association in a way that seems kind of, well, extreme.
Yeah, well, there was a lot of suspicious things they were doing. Like, they have 2 wives, one of which said she couldn't go because she was looking after a disabled child, and so she'd become a bit later on. But the second wife wouldn't go and was going to go later. So you had 2 men going over with dozens of children, leaving both their wives behind. I mean, that's odd in itself.
How many wives did they leave behind?
Their 2 wives.
Each 2.
Yeah, 2 brothers have 2 wives, and they both leave their wives behind.
So there's only 2 wives, not 8.
Not 8 that we know of, just 2.
Well, I think like both brothers are married to 1 wife each.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because I heard this Abdur Rahim Green, he has 2 wives, being a white guy.
Is that the ginger one?
No, that's Fontaine.
Avalon Green. Is he not the one with the ginger beard? There was a video of him in Hyde Park.
So he's
saying,
blonde hair, blonde beard.
Yeah. Take the Jew away, he smells.
Yeah, that one.
Is that the one you're on about?
Yeah.
Well, he's ginger, isn't he? He's got like a one gingerish beard.
Well, I wouldn't call that ginger. I'd call that more blonde than ginger. Because I call this Fontaine guy, him I call ginger.
I don't know if my like red ginger hair is showing up on camera.
Yeah, it does have a reddish tint to it. Yes.
It's just like the camera isn't really showing. I have gorgeous red locks.
Of course, yes.
I know. Look what you do.
Okay, and finally, I thought I'd never get Saudis. I mean, I have to have something on Saudi. I mean, come on, is there a program, a Jinn&Tonic show without the Saudis? They went led another. Well, what do you call this? Insurgents, a mass attack, or so. They led the coalition retaliatory force into Yemen. Apparently, they targeted civilians, and apparently they used airstrikes, and some of these attacks have been witnessed by the United Nations and observers, and they are now contemplating whether these are crimes against humanity. So the United Nations sanctions monitors said this in the Security Council, so it could be that United Nations are going to call in Saudi Arabia to please explain. Maybe then, I don't know if something like this can result in sanctions against Saudi Arabia, which would hit the poor country even harder. Now when Iran is coming with more oil, which is going to push the oil price further down, then Saudi is going to go in the red even further, and they will have to stop propagating Islam on an international basis. Oh my goodness, what then?
Well, America will probably veto that because also, and who is it? It's been discovered America have been actively involved in the invasion of Yemen with Saudi.
Oh, they have? I didn't know that.
Ah, you should pay more attention to the news.
Yeah, I don't. Where does that come from?
Oh, I forget which source. I read so much per day.
Ah, okay, because I've never heard that the US. I've heard that Iran has delivered some weapons, and that's about it. And even that I find dubious because it has never been confirmed, so I don't know.
Yeah, stop. My computer froze just as you were speaking. Did you say that it's been found that Saudi Arabia attacked Yemen and then attacked women?
No, 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 no.
Sorry, my PC froze.
No, women are objects. Come on, the Saudis will never attack women. Come on, they need them as incubators. No, they targeted civilians.
Yeah.
They target women in different ways, not with airstrikes.
We've got US drone attacking Al Qaeda in Yemen. That's in the Yahoo News.
Yeah, but that's decades ago. Isn't that how
Dated
whatever
16th
his
of
name
January
was?
1916.
Okay, I don't know when this happened, but I just remember the last message that I heard is that they caught I don't know whom and killed him, one of the Al Qaeda bosses. Okay, that's the end of my topics. Anyone else with any topic?
I'll,
Oh, you're frozen again. Switch off the video because you're cutting out even when you're talking. So maybe
Did anyone hear what happened? I think it was just in today's news with that country. What's it called? Tajikistan.
Tajikistan.
8 million.
What happened there?
Well, it was just in the news. I think it was today's news. I saw it today. What happened is that apparently there's been a rise in Salafism, which is really concerning the local government. And the president, who I think has been president for I think since like the early or mid 1990s, he's actually decreed that all beards should be shaved and all shops selling hijabs should stop selling hijabs.
Oh, okay. They're giving people stylish recommendations or what?
Yeah, which just kind of seems like it's going to backfire to me. I mean, like you're kind of worried about extremism, and your solution to that is to look like an enemy of Islam rather than doing the obvious thing, which might be, education, maybe.
Wow.
It's
Okay,
true
I think
that
this is stupid anyway.
it's true that like a lot of Tajiks are. I remember there are a lot of
Tajikis, that's it. So,
Tajikistan in all kind of
Tajikistan.
Arab countries.
I don't know. It's just the thing that you can't help but notice. It's like every single person in power, be it Western, Eastern, whatever, is a fucking moron.
Yes.
That's the summary after 2 hours.
You can actually tell though. I mean, there's always moronic things. I mean, what GP mentioned earlier, like that bloke with the cat. I think I heard you say you didn't believe him. That actually happened. You know, there was the fucking criminal. I think like they mowed down like a 5-year-old girl, and the judge refused to deport him. Says, "Oh, I can't because of human rights laws. Article 8, right to family life. He's got a cat." What the fuck? You can take the cat with him.
I wouldn't want to punish the cat like that.
Although, it does have to be said that it's not that the law itself says you can't deport a criminal because they've got a cat. This was just one idiot judge who interpreted the law in a fucking ridiculous way.
Wow.
Isn't this why the likes of UKIP and the Tories want to put out of the ECHR and replace it with the British Bill of Rights? Because they are okay with most of the human rights, but not being able to deport people on the basis of, right to a family life or right not to be mistreated in the country they would be deported to is just ridiculous. And they just want to say, nix on that.
Well, they are
again, this is like, I mean, most of the laws aren't too bad. It's just that the judges, certain judges occasionally just interpret it in ludicrous ways. I mean, like, the one thing that's coming to mind is that one British hate preacher. What was his name? Omar something. I think it was like Omar. So it was the one that got deported to Morocco
the hook guy,
and like was this massive thing.
Abu Hamza.
Yeah,
It
Abu Hamza.
was this massive thing. And I mean, he actually was deported. Like the worry was he'd go back home and they'd torture him to get information. Theresa May just said, "Well, can you guarantee that you're not going to torture him? Because if you do, we can't give him to you." Oh no, no, we're not going to torture him. Okay, he's on a plane. Gone, done.
Crazy. Ace, do you think, because this sounds interesting, but I didn't, Ace is writing a comment on Majid Nawaz, who says, surely you agree theocracy is wrong. And then Sarah says, do I need to?
Yeah, I saw that whole TV program. She says, doesn't theocracy have a place?
You're joking.
Not at all. And she's supposed to be the human rights advisor in Australia.
Yeah, I could tell what she was roughly what she was going to say when she came on wearing the headscarf. She's obviously taking a bit of a conservative approach to Islam.
Her whole position was you've got no right to criticise Islam.
I find, I don't know, she's more honest in a way than Majid Nawaz is, because he says, oh, I'm not a devout Muslim. I mean, why don't you just admit you're not a Muslim at all, for God's sake? What on earth does it mean to call yourself a Muslim but not a devout Muslim, and, you know, you don't pay attention to half the Qur'an? It just seems like a dishonest position.
It is possible that he's labelling himself a Muslim to keep himself within the Islamic fold, because he thinks that maybe he can affect some change.
But does he think they're really stupid because they're going to fall for the idea that, oh, well, he's a Muslim, so we better listen to him, even though he ignores large amounts of the Islamic
he does travel to Pakistan.
If you're talking about,
if he says he's not a Muslim, they can arrest him legally.
Saying we should listen to him, then I think definitely no. If you're talking about non-Muslims, then
Raven?
probably yes. Which is a very sad thing. It's like the story of Mohammed Hamza. You know, certain platforms like the BBC and the Guardian so desperate to find a friendly Muslim so we can all link arms and sing Kumbaya.
Well, that just means we need to get rid of BBC and the Guardian, certainly get rid of the licence fee. There's no way it deserves any public funding.
I don't even pay my licence fee. I rang him up and said, I'm not watching it.
I'm legally licence free. So whenever I see bias from the BBC, which is virtually every day, I can say, well, I don't pay them a penny, but there's just a depressingly large number of people who still do.
A lot of the problems, I think, just come down to political correctness. I mean, in a way, I kind of like the idea of political correctness. You know, I mean, I kind of like the idea that I know that you know, in such cultures, something that I might find normal, they find like it means something different. I kind of like that, because if I'm going to insult someone, I want to do it deliberately, not accidentally. But it's just the way it's morphed into this absolute perversion. I don't know. It's just it's really is like it's like living in Wonderland.
It's not a perversion, though, is it? Because the whole point about political correctness is, if something isn't actually correct, then to say it needs to be politically correct. Well, I support actually correct politics.
Well, what do you mean?
What is that?
Politically, if something's politically correct, it's like, well, it might be wrong, but it's politically correct to say it, so let's say it.
No, I still don't get it.
Let me get your thoughts on this, because I'm quite curious. You know that Anjem Choudhury is apparently in court now for supporting the Islamic State.
Didn't know he was in court.
Yes, he is in court.
No. So I was having a conversation with this recently, and I got to say, I don't like it. I really don't like it. Like, I mean, if he's actually funding them, that's one thing. If he's like trying to help them out in some way, that's one thing. If he's recruiting for them, that's one thing. But to actually just say, you know, as an individual, I support them. I mean, it really disturbs me that you can actually that can be a criminal thing.
Aiding and abetting the enemy, I believe it would fall under, because he's not.
Well, it's
just
actually not aiding and abetting. It's just. I mean, I don't particularly like. I don't want someone arrested for going to Hail Hitler. I just point at him and laugh. I don't want him to face legal consequences.
Yes, but there's a little bit more to it than just lifting up his hand and saying hi on Muhammad. He's saying people like Islamic State are the people you should go to. I encourage you to go and join a caliphate. He's been doing that sort of thing. You've got two of his comrades in arms who have gone through the trial process and are actually in prison now because they were distributing said literature to do such things.
I can
Well,
understand
the thing about everybody's mate Andy and his band of merry men is he could have been arrested under previous laws very easily. You know, if you're talking about supporting certain things or this idea of not just hate speech, but actually goading people into action, every time he said, well, you know, in a perfect Islamic country, such and such would happen, or like, if we were really governed by Allah's law, then, you know, gays would be whipped in the street and shit like that. That right there could very easily be taken as, you know, as actually encouraging people to take the law into their own hands and act. And I was having this conversation with someone a while ago when we were talking about actually criminalizing just supporting certain groups. And I said to the person I was talking to, we don't need laws that can very possibly be very repressive laws that takes away right to free speech. We already have these laws that are sufficient. You know, the police just need to stop twiddling the thumbs.
Well, it wasn't the police, it was a shift in paradigm with the government of today. They had Camerons actually say, we are no longer going to allow these things to go on, even if they're not breaking the law.
That's the thing, I mean, it kind of seems like a first step to
He allowed the police
a
to do
very
the thing.
undemocratic and very unfree society. I mean, I'm genuinely kind of nervous that someone might take a second step.
Well,
I
we've
can
never
understand.
looked
I can understand the desire for them to arrest him because he's one of these people who has actually incited violence. But I think from a tactical point of view, I don't get the British government. Why don't they want these people to go to Syria? I mean, that they're doing us a service by ridding our society of them and segregating themselves off to Syria, where they'll probably die, which seems like a win-win to me.
No, there's two
Well, I
reasons.
think that's
Number
why
one, you
Andy
know
would
that they're
never
going to go. Okay, they're going to go somewhere to go and commit a crime, and number two, they might come back.
There's no need for them to come back if we took their passports away, which
Right,
does,
and
of
that
course,
is
go
the
back to needing border control for the UK.
Well, I mean, the thing is, it's actually very difficult to get a visa to come into the UK if you're not an EU member.
If we're talking about people who've gone to Syria having been British citizens, my policy would be that you go to Syria or another country where we strongly suspect that you're going to go for terrorist purposes or terrorist training or something. We take your passport away. You've sacrificed your right to a British passport. Simple as that.
I would have
Jeremy,
no
if you
problem
live,
with that at
you
all.
live in a
They're
country.
basically, they're traitors through and through. There's no good can come of them coming back here.
Yeah, well, that woman recently came back from Syria. She's been put in jail. She was accused of joining ISIS.
Yeah, but why are we wasting money putting her in jail? Just send her back to Syria.
I kind of feel for the Syrians though, because I mean, we're talking about. I mean, let's actually think about it. Let's run through this idea of we just sort of send them on their way. Maybe we even have a bit of a whip around and buy them a ticket if they can't afford it. I mean, they're actually going there, and what are they going to be doing? Religious genocide, ethnic cleansing, rape, slavery, murder, slaughter. You can kind of see why politicians don't really want to fund that, or don't just want to say, you know, oh yeah, on your merry way.
But in the scheme of things, it won't make much difference because there's so many Muslim extremists over there anyway. A few more isn't going to make much difference. And also, we're setting up camps. I think we should do even more to fund camps in places like Turkey where these people can go and force the Gulf states to take a few migrants as well. And then the innocent people in Syria can sort of sit it out there while
Buy an
carnage
island.
happens.
Well, the thing that gets me about the whole Turkey thing, I mean, like, if it was actually to work in Turkey, Turkey would have to massively change its own laws and its own, its own laws, because you can't do anything there. Like, you can't work, you can't get residence. It's really hard to do it. But I mean, what I just think of, I kind of like what Merkel's saying lately, and you know, the only reason she's saying this is because she knows that people are turning against her now. But this idea of deporting criminals, it's kind of amazing to me the amount of refugees that come to Europe, which is a very safe country, and just commit crimes. I was reading an article last week in Sweden, and it was talking about this 15-year-old boy who was a Syrian refugee that fucking murdered a woman that worked at the shelter. And a policeman actually commented that this is happening a lot. We're getting more and more and more reports of like rapes and murders and things in refugee shelters, not just for adults, but for like kids, like teenagers. And you've got to wonder what goes through their heads.
Yeah, but Raven, you're living in a country where somebody who represents Muslims and says that Jihadi John was a gentle guy. And then not only does he sort of paint somebody who's an absolute sadistical killer in the nicest way, this organization is then exempt from tax. This organization is being sponsored by the British population, and then nobody stops this.
Well, the thing about Cage.
Look how many times lots of these authorities, these funny organizations have said these things. They are representatives of Muslims, and they are still tax exempt.
The thing that gets me about Cage, right, is that bloke in Cage who said that when he knew Mohammed Enswar that he was a gentleman. That doesn't necessarily bother me. It's like, okay, you met him, you thought he was a gentleman, whatever. What really pissed me off is like, oh, MI5 tried to recruit him and the security services were really mean to him, and it's Britain's fault that he's beheading people in Syria. I'm just like, what the fuck? If he'd just kind of like if he'd just stopped right there at the whole gentleman thing, I would have thought, okay, you knew him, you thought he was gentle, you're a bad judge of character. I would have left it there. But they're actually blaming other people for his actions. I mean, if I got attacked by a black man, I'm not going to go stab the next black man I see. In some sort of revenge. It's ridiculous.
Were you talking earlier? The woman who got stabbed, was she the Swedish woman working in the migrant processing centre?
Yeah.
Or the.
I don't know. Was she the one that was stabbed by a 15-year-old boy?
Yeah. Do we know what country he was from?
Syria, a Syrian refugee.
Yes, he's probably been raised to think that women are worth less than men, and non-Muslims are virtually worthless.
See, even that right there, right, that doesn't fly with me, because let's say that he was raised in a society that literally taught him that women are worthless. Okay. But then it follows that he flees for country, 15-year-old kid, flees for country, war-torn country, goes to Sweden to seek a better life, is actually in a refugee centre, he's got a bed, he's got a roof over his head, clothes on his back, food in his belly, and then stabs someone, a native Swede, a citizen of the country he's fled to, stabs her. That doesn't follow.
Well, why not? Because you've been taught that Islam's going to take over the world one day, so you want to get rid of the non-Muslim cockroaches as quickly as possible, right?
By stabbing the person whose job is to help you out.
Well, also, he probably didn't think there was any chance he was going to be deported. I mean, is he going to get deported?
Even if he's not.
Are you sure he's 15 years old? Because maybe he says he's 15 years old.
Oh, that's the other thing, because there's a lot of reporting there's a huge amount of reporting of migrant children. Oh, the poor little migrant children. And these children are late teens, early 20s.
Years old and are really 28.
Because it's a long process to really test that. I mean,
and I see that especially the children who are the most aggressive. I see kids, 14, 15, 16. They are the most aggressive because they are the ones who are stupid. They were indoctrinated with this. They don't want to go to school. They want to be paid a salary by being in a country. They want to propagate their Muhammad. I mean, I've seen these guys. If you go past a stand, a Muslim stand, it's usually the kids who are screaming and spitting at Christians. Those are the ones that I find the most aggressive.
Another very interesting thing is this whole. I mean, we all know that Muslim communities the world over are riddled with conspiracy theories. One of the funniest ones I heard lately is there's a conspiracy theory. I don't know how popular it is right now, but some people believe it. That the mass sexual assaults and thefts and gang rapes in Cologne and in like other German cities and a few other different European ones apparently they were being paid to do it by the Islamic State to give refugees a bad name so that Europe wouldn't help Muslims.
Oh, please. Yeah, actually, this comes from the Muslim Brotherhood. Sorry, Abu, you said something, then you switched back.
No, but I mean,
sorry. But it was...
teenagers in generally are, I mean, their prefrontal cortex hasn't developed yet, so
Maybe that's why.
so they are a bit more. I mean, they have
Susceptible.
they can't control themselves.
So
But I'm not sure that this when you hear this
raped
that he's
anyone when I was
15 years old and so on, you should take it with a huge grain of salt, because they have clear incentives to say that they are younger than they really are.
Yeah,
to avoid punishment.
had a slightly different point about the media reporting migrants as children. I don't know whether this is a linguistic thing or something. Maybe in Scandinavia, it's normal to call like a 17-year-old just say they're a child. But when I think of child, I'm sort of thinking, I don't know, below 10 years old.
Exactly.
I think of teenagers or youths.
It's legal. There's different
No,
things.
when
Like if
I
you're
think
under
of
a certain
child, I think,
age,
like,
But
you can't be punished. You're
The
not.
media report about how they're taking in children.
Yeah, but
And
it's
to
like
me,
this.
it would be more
If you're
appropriate to
under
say
18,
teenagers or youths.
or minors.
Yeah. But if you're under 18, you are considered a child legally, in the sense that you're not allowed to vote, and you're not allowed to. I mean, you should have, what's it called in English? Like, you should have someone taking care of you. And under, I think it's 15 or 14, if you commit crimes below that age, you're not held accountable for it.
And the registration process is a bit
No,
funny.
in case of murdering, that's the different story about accountability. Murder is, in nearly any civilized country, still a capital crime.
But no, it's not capital. I mean, he probably will.
Of course, he will go to jail, but he will not go for a lifetime. That's the
exactly.
difference.
Maybe like 5 years or something.
And juvenile jail, yeah.
A juvenile jail, and it's not called jail in that sense, and it's not called I don't know what it is. It's not it's not the same thing as someone that is older than, I don't know if it's 14 or 15.
Yeah, but although in a legal sense they're children, I think this is my theory. The media are overusing the word child to try and tug on the heartstrings. Oh, they couldn't really do anything much wrong.
Yeah, of course.
But we're talking about young men, really.
Yes.
The media is forgetting
one
that Jeremy has
It backfired recently when the media put out a photograph of one of the European MEPs standing with 6 children, all of which had beards.
Yeah, but it's also one thing that is in central Stockholm. You have like from Maghrib. How do you say Maghrib in English?
The desert.
Morocco. What was it called?
Sahara.
No, anyways,
The mountainous region in the southwestern
Morocco.
area of Africa.
Anyway, but it's important point, because there's a lot of gangs of so-called children running around in the center of Stockholm and committing various kinds of crime, all kinds of crime, like they're harassing young women and stealing and things.
Wow.
But the funny thing is that they are not from Syria. They are not from a war area. They're from Morocco. You say that in English?
Yeah, Morocco. They probably have come through France.
Yeah. So they have not really any reason to be there. They're not refugees. They're not from a country with war or anything. So it's an extremely weird situation.
Yeah, but this is the new plan that those people.
They are so-called children, but I don't know. I think there is childhood. They beat like big guys. They beat what's called like the Harris. Okay. Anyway, you got the point. They are so-called children, but few believes that they really are children.
So they're not actually like citizens of that country.
No.
Can I?
This is one of the things that really gets to me. Right, when it comes to refugees and migrants and things like that, it's like I genuinely think that people that really are in need that are fleeing these places. I don't necessarily have a problem with Europe sort of, saying, okay, you can come over here if get a job, pay your taxes, contribute. But I mean, if you're going around committing crimes and you're not a citizen of that country, why are you still in that country? Like, why doesn't the governments of that country deport you? I mean, can you imagine if I went to a country like I don't know, America, and I was going about stealing cars and beating up people? I'd be deported. I should be deported because I'm not conducive to the local good, to the good of the society.
Yeah, but this is what's happening.
I mean, you actually being that's the thing. You being there, if you are not a citizen of a particular country, your being there is not a right; it's a privilege. It's
Okay,
a privilege
and this is exactly
taken away.
This is what I was talking about earlier. This is what's changing now, that those people are the first ones who are going to get deported, chop now.
But it's not happening because the last thing I've heard about this was people being told you're not eligible to be allowed to stay in Germany, then doing a runner to a different town and re-registering as a migrant.
This is the Germany that's lost track of 600,000 immigrants.
I have to interrupt you all. I have to go, and therefore I play the Hadith now, and you can go on with your Islamophobic.
Okay, Hadith of the day. Today it's on from Sahih Muslim, and it's about the peace and whatever of Messenger of Allah. The extended version, please, Ike.
Oh, a silent verse.
Chapter 2, 256, for those who don't know, is the verse that speaks of there being no compulsion in religion, i.e., no one can be forced to accept Islam as a faith.
The Qur'an said there's no compulsion in Islam.
There's no compulsion in religion, but truth stands out clear from error.
There is no compulsion in religion.
La ikraha fid din. There is no compulsion in religion, full stop.
He said there's no compulsion forcing people in the deen.
There is no compulsion in religion.
God says in the Quran there is no compulsion in religion.
There is no compulsion in religion, of course.
In Islam, nobody can be forced to come into Islam. And it's impossible because Islam means the willful submission to God on His terms.
Na din ijbari, na ibadat ijbari, na hijab ijbari.
Islam is preaching above all peace. Peace, peace, and peace.
In Sahih Muslim 133 we read, "The Messenger of Allah said, I have been commanded to fight against people until they testify that there is no God but Allah, that Muhammad is the Messenger of Allah." Thank you very much, Ali, for the Hadith of the week, which shows that there is no
As I said, there are
religion.
that La ikraha fid din, that verse in Surah Al-Baqarah is many thinks it's abrogated. If
There's
that
no abrogation in Islam.
Okay. But anyway, if it isn't abrogated, the Quran is very contradictory.
Well, does it mean verbally fight, or does it mean sword fighting, or?
No, like ikraha, like kara is like you don't like it or you hate it. Not hate, but you don't like it.
Okay,
This verse that's often talked about, no compulsion in religion. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I am going from memory. But if I remember right, it was something about some Jews that were like babysitting some kids, and I think the Muslims at the time of Muhammad was all like, "Oh, you should convert to Islam," and they're like, "Oh, well, this is our religion, this is our heritage, it would break our parents' hearts." No. There is no compulsion in religion. The right way has been made clear from the wrong way. Abandon your faith, join Islam.
Yeah, exactly.
Wasn't it something like that? The whole no compulsion thing is saying there's no compulsion in religion to stay with the religion of your forefathers. It's not saying that there's no compulsion to join Islam. I think if I'm remembering the context right, the whole point of that verse is that there's no compulsion to stay in your own religion, but you should be compelled to join Islam.
You know what? I can make some research to next week if I have time.
As I said, it's like it's a vague memory.
No, but it's interesting. I can make some. I can, because I have like tafsir books here, and I can make some research.
That will be.
But even though the full context is a vague memory, if we just follow the very next line, there is no compulsion in religion. The right way has been made clear from the wrong way. Right way being Islam, wrong way being any other faith.
I agree with you, because it's always struck me as what Muhammad was saying was being sarcastically saying, I've got the best religion, you got the worst religion, I'll never change to your religion. But there's no compulsion.
No, I don't think that was said in sarcasm. I think it was said in dead seriousness. There is no compulsion in religion. The right way has been made clear from the wrong way.
Yeah, but the question here, I mean, of course they think it's the best religion and so on, but it's more like, in this life, are you going to be forced to be a Muslim in this life or not? Like, but, so, I mean, all these words like compulsion, like, you know that all like evil dictators say, like North Korea calls themselves the Democratic Republic, or what is it? The People's Democratic Republic, and I mean, I don't know if it's particularly democratic. So you have to put it in context. If it's compulsory, if it's not, I mean, Muhammad himself attacked people and forced them, and his Sahaba attacked people, and either you convert or you die or pay jizya. Isn't that compulsion?
Exactly.
So, I don't know. So I mean, you should take it. But I can research this.
Would you do that for next
week? If I have time. Maybe I.
So I will make an announcement on Thursday that Abu Molhid is going to do a full lecture on.
I can promise it, but if I get some time over, I will do it. Okay.
Brilliant.
Al-Baqarah 256, isn't it? This one. It's a little bit laughable. Let there be no compulsion in religion. Truth stands out clear from error. Well, if that were the case, then presumably Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and et al. Would have no problem with atheists and non-Muslims, going around preaching their stuff, because it would be so obvious that they were wrong. It would be so clear that Islam stood out as correct and they stood out as incorrect. But for some reason, they need to kill people who dare to oppose Islam.
Well, Jeremy, this kind of relates to what I was saying earlier when I said that there's going to be a conference in Morocco which actually specifies the contract of Medina to actually talk about the rights of non-Muslims in Muslim-majority countries. I'm really hoping that it's not just Muslims that are attending this. I'm really hoping that they're actually going to get some minorities flown in who are going to talk about this and that. I heard something about a Christian priest is going to attend, or has spoken to someone that is attending.
What's that going to achieve, though?
Well, that's the thing. What is it going to achieve? I mean, hopefully, if I think it really depends on the people that are actually going to this conference. Is it just going to be like people that your average young angry Muslim looking for a cause? Is it going to be a kind of person that they listen to, or is it not? Or I don't know. I'm hopeful, but
it doesn't really matter what these people at a conference say. I mean, you've got hundreds of millions of Muslims who don't want to hear a single word against Islam around the world. They're not going to have their minds changed by a conference.
I think that's why they're basing it on the contract of Medina, which I believe is being propagated as the quote-unquote first Muslim constitution. But if they actually do pull off this conference, and in a beneficial way, and they can actually Islamically justify it, like this was a contract Muhammad himself was exonerated, then maybe there's hope.
Not really, having read the contract of Medina. It is very much us and them. The Muslims, the non-Muslims have to be okay with the Muslims and support them in their defense and whatever, but the Muslims can go away and do whatever they want if it's part of the jihad.
Does it include the jizya?
I mean,
that's what I got. It's online, you can read it.
Whoa, you need to agree who's talking.
Oh, I've stopped now. I just say, if you're going to say a contract with Medina might solve problems, you have to go and read it, and from what I've seen of it, it won't solve anything. It is a very much.
You say they do have to pay the tribute to Muslims.
I don't remember the actual payment in it, but I do remember reading the points of it, and it just seems it's not going to solve anything. It does reinforce the Qur'an.
Well, it shows the superiority of Muslims. I don't actually remember as well whether it says you need to pay blah, 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 jizya and blah, blah. It just says that you have to accept the dimitude. In other words, that you are inferior to Muslims. Your building, your bells, your this, you are not allowed this. We are allowed this. So it regulates this. I don't remember reading anything about the jizya. But the rest is really, we are the superior people, and you need to behave accordingly.
Yeah,
it actually brings
I'm not 100% behind that. I mean, I do get what you're saying, and I agree with it. But I think there are other factors that you could actually call.
Medina Constitution.
There's a whole Islamic narrative about how Muhammad invited Jews and Christians to debate with him about whether or not he was a prophet. They all disagreed with him. They were apparently very abusive because, you know, Mo suffered so much persecution. But rah, stiff upper lip, he persevered. And, you know, like, Muhammad would invite people to debate with him at his mosque. And then even when they disagreed with him and disrespected him, he allowed them to stay the night. The contract of Medina, it might be a different contract, but I think it was a contract of Medina. It might be a different one. But you'd know what I'm talking about. You know where Muhammad decreed that when we go to war against such and such tribe, leave the clerics and the religious buildings alone. Don't kill priests. Don't ransack churches. They are people of the book. It's holy. It's sacred. You can't do that. So there are certain things that you could mention and that you could pick upon to actually Islamically justify not fucking over non-Muslims.
Yeah, but I mean, at the end of the day,
so, like, whether or not Muslims actually listen to that is a different.
Come on, guys, don't.
But you
talk
can
over each
Islamically
other.
justify it if you.
Even just check if somebody's talking. Don't talk over each other now, please.
Oh, sorry.
No. I was going to say that the Charter of Medina, or like, you know, the Constitution of Medina, I don't know, there's like different names for it, but Chapter 9 has abrogated all of that. It's abrogated that verse in Surah Al-Baqarah. It's abrogated the Constitution of Medina. Chapter 9, verse 5, I believe, abrogates both of those. They abrogated all the contracts with the pagans. They abrogated all the leniency. I forget the exact quote of the verse, but it basically is saying to slay them wherever they find them after the sacred months are over. So, and then for the Jews and Christians in 929, it says to fight them until they pay the jizya and feel themselves subdued, meaning basically that they have to pay the jizya willingly, and when they're subdued means that they'll be ruled over by Islamic law. So that was the basis for like the whole dimitude thing.
Saghirun is like
humbled
very,
or
it's like they
but basically the point of it is that jizya is for humiliation. Basically, I mean, in my view, it's for humiliation.
Well, hang on, I'm just reading it, and half of it is about blood money. Who is to pay how much to whom?
It's to the state, if I remember correctly. It's not to whom. It's to the Islamic State itself.
The immigrants of Banu Auf should be responsible for their ward and shall, according to their former approval, jointly pay the blood money in mutual collaboration, and every group shall secure the release of their prisoners by paying the ransom. Moreover, the deal among the believers shall be in accordance with the recognized principles of law and justice. So it doesn't say who actually gets the money. They just say that they need to pay the ransom.
Are you talking about Chapter 9, verse 29, or are you talking about the Charter of Medina?
The Constitution of Medina, 63 articles.
Yeah, but like I said before, that was abrogated. Chapter 9, verse 5 abrogated all the contracts with pagans.
That's a different story, absolutely, yeah. But now, if there is no abrogation, it also falls away.
True, but I mean, we just have to look at, ISIS's justification for levying jizya. Unlike the Christians, they actually made them sign a contract. You can see the video on YouTube, and they take on Chapter 9, verse 29. So, I mean, obviously for them, abrogation applies, and let's not forget, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi has a PhD in Islamic studies, so I think he knows more than the average Muslim does. Just
Okay.
quoting 256. It's just bullshit because it is obfuscation to the nth degree that these people can get away with lying to people like that. I think is absolutely disgusting and shameful. I mean, it's clear. I mean, all the schools of jurisprudence agree in about, I would say, about 80 to 85% of issues. There are certain, nooks and crannies maybe which they disagree about. Jizya is universal among them, and it's a sign of subordination. Dhimmis are not equal to the Muslims. Muslim males are first-class citizens. Muslim females are second-class. Everybody else is third-class. I mean, it's just really that simple. I mean, if people try to throw shades of gray in here, it's pretty much black and white. There's the House of Islam and there's the House of War. The goal of the House of Islam is to take over and convert everything into the House of Islam. Right? It's just like communism. I mean, let's just call a spade a spade. I'm tired of people trying to cherry pick and do all that stuff. Either the Bible mandates slavery or it does not. Yes or no?
Sorry, did you mention the Bible just then?
Sorry?
Sorry, did you just say something about the Bible just then?
Yes. In the same context, is that if we're talking about slavery, and we're talking about the Bible, does it codify and mandate slavery?
Yes,
it does. Now, is there any reason to think that it doesn't?
Yes.
How so?
Jesus.
In what sense?
Well, the difference between Christianity and Islam is that with Christianity, you actually do have theological basis for taking it metaphorically. Jesus, according to the Bible, Jesus actually did come and say, "I have not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it." Granted, but he also said, "Let he who is without sin cast the first stone." He also advocated secularism. Rend unto Caesar Caesar's due, rend unto my father's due. My kingdom, heaven, is not of this world. You'd have to try very hard to not see that as an endorsement for secularism. And the idea of let he who is without sin cast the first stone. In Christianity, Christianity has a concept of original sin. We are all born in sin. So even though he did not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it, he used a very clever loophole, but it could never, ever be implemented. And then you have the writings of Paul, which, Paul contributed more to Christianity than Jesus did. Paul was one of Jesus' disciples, and he basically went to
Jesus' disciples. They never met.
Speaking mostly to non-Jews, because Jesus' audience were mostly Jews. Paul's audience was mostly Gentiles, and then as Christianity spread, it was an audience of non-Jews who came up with this ideology that people who are not Jews get to keep such and such of their culture, which basically kind of secularized and metaphoricalized the Bible.
Pre-Constantine,
in
yes.
Islam,
Post-Constantine, no. Yeah, well, pre-Constantine, yes. Post-Constantine, no.
But
I don't argue that.
Raven,
not pre-Constantine, because the whole idea of the is kind of what kind of makes my point for me.
What does that have to do with slavery?
Well, it's the idea of you got the Old Testament and the New Testament. The New Testament, everything I've just said. So you can sort of take slavery, and it's like, yeah, but No,
you can't.
Why not?
It doesn't say.
Well, obviously you can. Look at the former Christian world.
No, come on. Paul never met Jesus. Number one. Number two, it doesn't say stop slavery.
It doesn't say stop. It doesn't say stop
speaking.
slavery,
I'm not attaching anything prescriptive to it, but descriptively speaking.
Yeah. Okay. Well, just for an example, I think it was the last time I was on the show. I was speaking, and Jeremy was quite annoyed by it. I mentioned Majid Nawaz, who was talking to an imam on television, saying, "Oh, my son is in an Islamic school. I'm concerned about what is being taught." I don't think there is any justification whatsoever for stoning people in the 21st century. Will you join me in this? And Yemen's like, "Oh, well, it's not really that simple."
Yeah,
A Christian can very easily say, no justification in the 21st century. No justification for slavery in the 21st century. biblical mandates, like if you shag your wife and she doesn't bleed, she's not a virgin, take her in front of her father's house and stone her to death. You have, it's not just that the Christian world is advanced. You have so much theology which has been built over the last 2,000 years.
No,
which actually says, no, you do not actually have to do this shit.
Raven,
there's no comparison.
Well, then you
of
cherry
that in
pick.
Islam.
So to me, it's like, you just pick the parts you like and you discard the parts you don't like.
You're being just as dishonest as Muslims who don't want to acknowledge the fact that there are violent verses, violent sentences in the Quran. No, you cannot go and say,
I don't
like
see
this.
you're being just as dishonest in saying what you think is there is there.
It says so. It says.
Where does it say buy slaves in the New Testament? Where does it say it?
No, it says slaves obey your masters. That's what it clearly says. And it says that women have no authority over men.
It basically says if you're born a slave and you are a slave, you have to remain a slave. But what does that matter in a world where God has everybody as his slave?
Oh, please.
Okay. If
you want to take like Mormonism for an example, then in Mormonism you can't really get away from it. The Book of Mormon says very clearly that a black man can only enter heaven if he's a good slave, and then he's going to spend the rest of eternity as a slave. That was
didn't they also believe that
originally
black people have no
there in the
souls?
Book of Mormon, so you can't get away from it. It's the same in Islam. You can't really get away from it. But in Christianity, again, render unto Caesar Caesar's due, follow the law of the land, and again, let he who is without sin cast the first stone. So Islam doesn't have that. It's not that I'm being dishonest. What I'm saying is what the vast, 98% of the Christian population of the world believe.
It's dishonest.
So it's dishonest, but I'm just repeating what 98% of the Christian population globally believe.
I don't think 98% on that. If 98 do, then it's dishonest, yes.
I would love to quote
Well, it's not me
something.
being dishonest. It's me
I'm
saying
not
what
with you.
the vast majority, 98%, believe.
Anyone who says
I agree with you on that one.
being dishonest. Finished.
I'm dishonest. I want to say something because it's been bugging me for about the last hour. I've been trying to say this one thing which came to my over reflecting the big question today, and it was about the whole debate. It isn't that you do it, because in things from slavery through to killing, it isn't that you do it that's the problem, because all of humanity, no matter where you come from, have people who go around taking slaves, killing people, etc. The problem with Islam has been you have a book that promotes it, and that's what the religious problem is. It's not that they do it, it's just they have a religion that promotes it, and they hold that religion higher than everything else. And I think people should reflect on that more.
I think people do reflect on it. I mean, just recently it came out in Pakistan that they were again trying to pass laws to stop the fucking
Child marriage.
selling and rape of children. And then mullahs have just come into the government and are like, oh, no. See, this hadith here and this Quranic verse here, you can't really do that.
We did that last week.
I mean, I think a lot of, particularly Western Muslims, and it's even happening in, if you actually watch clips of Pakistani TV shows and Middle Eastern TV shows, people are talking about it.
Just reading something, Jesus said to his disciples, suppose one of you has a servant ploughing or looking after the sheep, will he say to the servant when he comes in from the field, come along now and sit down to eat? Won't he rather say, prepare my supper, get yourself ready and wait on me while I eat and drink? After that you may eat and drink. Will he thank the servant because he did what he was told to do? So you also, when you have done everything you were told to do, should say, we are unworthy servants, we have only done our duty. The servant sounds a bit like slaves, really.
Yeah, we're all slaves of God.
But
Yes,
he's referring to slaves of people there as well.
He's using that as a metaphor, but
Well,
even in the
you
Old
should-
Testament, we're all God's slaves. Adam was created to be God's slave.
Yeah, but he's not.
So does that make slavery okay?
He's accepting slavery by one person to another person as being a sort of norm. That he's not condemning it in passing or anything, is he?
Exactly. So come
No,
on,
no.
GP, is slavery okay? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, fine. Abu.
Why?
No, but
Why?
I mean,
Because-
slavery is mentioned in the Quran several times.
Yeah, multiple times.
So it's not like
I'm just quite interested to hear GPZ say why he thinks slavery is okay.
Because if you look back at slavery and why it first started, it wasn't always because of people going to war and taking people as captives. It was people unable to fend for themselves, going to somebody who could fend for themselves and selling themselves to be looked after.
So the blacks being deported.
So are you
village.
basically saying that? Sorry. I really need to say this before I forget. I'm sorry to interrupt. I don't want to forget what I'm going to say. So are you saying that, for example, it's better to sell yourself into slavery rather than, I don't know, receive?
I don't think you have a choice. You and me and Jeremy in the UK are slaves to the government and the Queen. We are her property. If she decides to go to war, she could conscript you to go fight on her behalf.
That's stupid.
I'm not being stupid. What do you fuck think happened in World War II? Conscription.
The Queen could just demand that I take up arms and go to war. Don't talk shit.
And what would happen if you decide to be a conscientious objector? Into
Sorry,
jail.
how
with
much
you.
power does a Queen have nowadays?
A lot more than you have.
The Queen is a okay.
I think here we're
The
going.
Queen is a figurehead. I will I will allow that she has a lot of power, but she just doesn't use it because that wouldn't be proper. I will allow that. But if you actually think about the
Oops, Raven has killed himself. GP, the point is, can the country, can the government, can the Queen go and sell you to another country?
In many ways, they are doing it right now. When there's
GP, come on! No, you are not being sold into another country.
Are
Nobody
being
can buy you
sold
for money.
abroad.
You know what, GP? If you know what, let's imagine a situation. Let's
You know
imagine a
what true freedom
situation
is?
where the Queen
Me
says
not
to
needing
her
anybody.
subjects. Hang about. Let's imagine a situation where the Queen says to her subjects, to the Brits, the Australians, the Canadians, well, not the Jamaicans anymore, but previously the Jamaicans. The New Zealanders. Let's imagine the Queen says to the people, to her subjects, to all these different countries, Britain, Australia, Canada, whatever, you know, go and join the army and fight Germany. How many people are going to do that? And how many people are going to be forced to do that? What, the Queen could just dictate it? You're talking shit.
How many people went to join up for... I don't know. Were you around with the Falklands when that happened?
I was born in...
Because I was a teenager. I was 18 when that happened. And the amount of peer groups of mine who actually said, I'd love to go and beat up the Argentinians. I'd love to join the army. It was rife around the country. You had the people who were anti-war, the usual people. But most of the youngsters, yeah, let's go kill those bastards over there.
Well, I feel the same way about the Islamic State. I don't necessarily see what that has to do with the Queen dictating whether or not I join the army.
Most of these wars are usually over rich man's property over somewhere else, getting lost to them. So they go to war. And if they decide to go to war, they have governments and institutions who could decide that you have to fight on their behalf. You will not find any country that does not have laws to attack people who decide they do not want to fight.
You're saying the Falklands wasn't about Britain's sovereign territory being invaded?
No, I wasn't saying that. I'm just saying that the government at the time wanted to fight a war.
Well, I'd want to fight a war if my sovereign territory was being invaded by a belligerent power with no legitimate claim.
Just like they did in Germany. Germany was invading Poland and we decided to fight a war.
Okay, what does that have to do with slavery?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're using the word slave for that, then you haven't really... I agree that there is difference, like slaves in some, like in Rome and Greece and so on. Not all of them... I mean, they were more like, or not all the time, but sometimes they were more like servants. and or like second-class citizens. But but the slaves in Islam
It's a
are
different story.
most often it's another thing. They are people captured in war, and they don't owe themselves anymore. They're just slaves. You see what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Yeah, there are different types of slavery. That was without a doubt. I mean, I consider the American prison system as a form of slavery.
Okay, yeah, but now we're going back into semantics. A slave, can we agree on
Is ownership.
one thing? A slave is something that you can acquire for money.
I think a slave is something.
Well,
you can own.
not necessarily.
Okay, yeah, but now we're going off. Now we're discussing.
No, I'm not.
No.
I'm not talking semantics. I'm talking what the law actually says. For instance, in the European Convention of Human Rights, a number of people in America under European law would legally be classed as slaves. If you've ever
This
been
is the
to
discussion
America,
I did not want to have. This is exactly the point that I was trying to make, to narrow it down to being able to acquire a human being through money. This is the definition that I would like to put out there, so that we stop discussing some forms and maybe
your definition is wrong.
God and things like that's not slavery.
A slave is not only acquired through money. It can
All right,
be
that's
acquired
I'm
through
putting that out
choices.
there. I'm putting
it can
that
be
as a
acquired through
definition.
inheritance. A slave could be acquired through many ways.
Can be. I said can be. A slave is somebody that can be bought and sold for money. That's what I'm saying. So I don't accept now slavery as emotional slavery and a slave to my wife and stupid stuff like that, or the domina who is
you can be sold.
That's not the slavery we're talking about. We're talking only about slavery where you can actually acquire.
You can be sold. You work for a company.
No, I cannot be sold.
Your manager sells that company and sells it to a second company. You have been sold your labour to that other company unless you decide to leave.
Why?
Yeah, but the difference there is that a slave has no choice to be a slave. Stop spamming can quit his job.
He can quit his job.
He can refuse. He can quit his job. A slave can't do that.
But it's a Hobson's choice, isn't he? He's got there.
It doesn't matter.
Quit his
Come
job.
on, guys. Come on. Don't be like that, please. I mean, this is getting
childish. A slave can refuse
now.
to give his labour to his master, and he will starve to death just as much as Stop Spamming, who refused to work for his employer and not get a wage.
If I was Stop Spamming's employer, and I says to him, okay, well, there's a very good potential in Islamic State-controlled territory. I'm going to send you and your wife over there. Now, if Stop Spamming had no choice but to go, maybe you'd have some sort of a foot in the door. But the fact is, Stop Spamming can actually say, no, fuck off, I'm not going there. I'm not taking my wife there. Well, if you don't, if you don't want to go, then you're no longer employed here, sir. Okay, fuck you, I quit. And that right there is not slavery.
Then he would only not be a slave if he's able to then be able to live independently without suffering any bad consequences.
Well, this actually relates to the point I was making about America. Like in the US, like in Europe, we don't really tip that much. We just don't. In America, you have to tip. I mean, like people who are like waiters, waitresses. The wage they get from their employer is not enough to live on. If they just had the wage that their employer gives them, they're not going to eat. They survive on tips. Whereas under European law, that's classed as slavery. If your employer does not give you a high enough wage that you can live independently, that you can pay your rent, that you can feed yourself, under European law, that is classed as slavery. Whereas in America, it's just normal.
What do you mean with European law?
In European law, if your employer does not give you a wage that you can live on, it's classed as slavery, because for various historical reasons. Whereas in America, it's just normal. It's normal to know that
I understand your point, but I understand your point. But what is European law? Is it Turkey European law or Swiss European law?
Neither.
Well, obviously there are different European laws, but all European laws have to conform to the European Convention of Human Rights.
That's not right, Raven. I speak
Really?
for Switzerland.
Hang about. So if Switzerland or Denmark or Germany or Britain implemented a law that was contrary to the European Declaration of Human Rights, you're saying that'd be fine?
Raven, I'm talking about Switzerland, because in Switzerland you have no law that says that has minimum wage. You don't have this. That's the reason why you are not allowed to talk with your colleagues about your salary, because
it's not part of the European community, is it?
I'm fairly certain in Swiss law, it's not actually illegal to talk about your salary, or is it?
It is. It is. Your boss can take you in front of the court, and the court can will say in the favor of the boss, because it damage his economy.
Is it slavery?
It is slavery.
Well, Switzerland in some ways operates outside the EU, so I don't know if that would apply.
The EU and the ECHR are separate things. So if you're signed up to the ECHR, then you have to implement the European Declaration of Human Rights.
That's why I asked about what is European law.
It's the wrong expression.
I would define European law as any law implemented that is not in violation of the European Union human rights, the European Declaration of Human Rights. If it doesn't violate it, then that is European law. But that's how I would define it. If someone wants to disagree, then...
Okay, but we're talking about slavery, are we not?
In Islam, right?
In Islam. We're talking about slavery in Islam, and we're talking about the United Nations.
Well, not necessarily in Islam, because
applicable
like
in Switzerland.
GPZ just said that he doesn't think slavery is a bad thing.
No, I should really clarify and say that I think slavery can be classed as a bad thing in principle. Sometimes, though, society has made it that slavery is actually in force and working very well, and it is used by some to exploit and by others to protect the citizenry.
But you're just repeating what you said previously.
Yes,
and I think we all reject your definition of slavery.
Yes, you might.
Yeah, well, GPZ,
will.
I think the thing is, we have different definitions of slavery. I think that when you say the word slavery, you're talking about something different than the rest of us are.
I am.
I mean, I just use that example of stop spamming, like, oh, go to the Islamic State. No, fuck off, I quit. And you seem to think that that's not a valid thing. So maybe you could define exactly what you mean by slavery, because
any kind of
dependency, the same word to mean different things.
When you don't have the ability to choose your own way and be totally free.
Yeah, that nobody has.
Nobody has that.
So everybody on this planet is a slave. Great.
You know, everybody who is not a hunter-killer living their own independent life. I would say the tribes living in the Brazilian jungle have more freedom and are less of a slave to anybody within their own culture. But me living in a civilization, living in London, no, I can't go out and do whatever I want. Somebody will say, you can't pick that apple, it belongs to somebody.
Yeah, but surely that's trivialising the word slave, isn't it?
No, it's me looking at history and how things have evolved over the centuries. And over the last 100 years ago, there has been a great reformation to try and get rid of what was historical slavery. We're getting there, but...
Okay. Can Abu say something now? Because he's been trying for the last half hour.
Oh, yeah, of course.
No, I tried to find the quote, but Aristotle said something about everybody that has to work for his to make his living is a slave. But usually he was an aristocrat himself, so it was quite easy for him to say that. So according to that definition, maybe we are all more or less slaves. But I think you're like, I don't know, you can never define this word completely. That's what is a donkey? A donkey is an animal. An animal is a biological organism, and so on. It can go on forever. But I think there's a difference between being an ordinary wage slave and the kind of slavery you have in Islam.
Exactly.
For sure. I mean, if we're going to talk about the slave trade, like, let's put the term slavery or slave aside. Let's talk about the slave trade itself. The Arab world has led that. I mean, the history of the Arab slave trade. I mean, you just got to pick up a book and read it. The amounts, like even in India, like the country where I'm from, like when the invaders came in, there was one guy. Muhammad bin Qasim, I think was his name, and he attacked India, and I think he took roughly about over 20,000 Hindu girls back to Arabia, and they were sold to basically become concubines in somebody else's harem. So I don't know about that in Judaism or Christianity. I don't know about people taking 20,000 girls as concubines. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. This is unique to Islam.
Well, I think it was Thomas Jefferson at one point in his political career. Actually, I think it was Thomas Jefferson. I may be wrong, but I'm just going to say it just because I'm not sure. But I think it was Thomas Jefferson or another American politician. Actually, in I believe the 1800s, went to an embassy in Paris to talk to various Muslim congregations to say, your citizens are fucking capturing our citizens and selling them to slaves. Stop that. And the Muslims replied, well, no, we can't stop it. It's part of our religion.
Exactly.
Thomas Jefferson and the
John Adams.
ambassador.
I think it was Thomas Jefferson. I might be wrong, but
it was Thomas Jefferson.
Was sort of,
You'll find the letter in his historical museum in America, and it's published on the internet too. And it was to the Tripoli ambassador, because it was the Barbary pirates who were capturing people, enslaving them, and at that particular time they had enslaved a US ship, put them all into prison and kept them as slaves, and that was one of the formations of the Marines, the shores of Tripoli.
Mm-hmm. Correct. Yeah. I'm trying to find the actual quote. Just give me 1 second, because
if I remember correctly, that was the first war that the U.S. Navy fought.
Yeah.
Yes, they did. Yep. The rest of Europe were paying the tribute to the Barbary pilots, and they were trying to convince America to also pay the tribute. And America said, no, what have we got to do with it? We've never had a war with Islam. We've never been crusaders. What have we got to do with their problems?
Let's have the first war with Islam.
It was.
Mm-hmm.
I
have the quote here. It's Jefferson says that the ambassador replied, he said, it was written in their Qur'an that all nations which had not acknowledged the Prophet were sinners, whom it was their right and duty of the faithful to plunder and enslave, and that every Musliman who was slain in this warfare was sure to go to paradise.
It's a fascinating history. You should look up a book on it.
Yeah. I mean, this is nothing new. I mean, it's jihad conquest. I mean, you just have to read about it from Spain all the way to India. It didn't come through defensive warfare or through propagation or through missionary work. I mean, I think we all know how early Islam spread.
Okay, so the only thing is, what do we do now to get Muslims who are radicalized to accept that they can't be? They should be normal people.
No, commit apostasy. That's what I said.
Well, I think they should all try and watch that big questions of this week, where they were saying, let's just say become a British Muslim, and think of it in your own nation. How could I become a German Muslim? How can I become a Swiss Muslim? How can I become an American Muslim? What is it that in your countries of America, Germany, and Switzerland is unique to you that makes you better than Islam, and how can Muslims incorporate that into their religion? I think many Muslims are trying to do that desperately, and we should support them.
I agree.
I mean, for me, there's no really way out. I mean, I would, if I'm going to look at it from a realistic standpoint, unless there are higher institutions like Al Azhar and I don't know, the Muftis in Mecca or some other high ranking official or institution does something to renovate or to reform. Besides that, which I don't see happening in the near future, I would prefer them to commit apostasy.
Well, TJ, 2 points. First of all, you said reform. I don't necessarily think that is the way to go. But last time I was on the Jinn&Tonic show, I made the point that Salafis are a reformist movement.
Revivalist.
What is
I would
a
say
Salafi
revivalist.
if not a reformist? They want to reform Islam to strip away what they see as more than 1,000 years of Bid'ah and return Islam to the purity of 7th century Arabia. And I was having this conversation a while ago with Stop Spamming. I think this was sometime last year. And I made the point that Islam doesn't need a reformation, it needs an enlightenment. And Stop Spamming apparently agreed, because he said he was going to stop saying Islam needs a reformation and say it needs an enlightenment. But going from your accent, I would say that you're American. Is that right?
Yes. Correct.
Okay.
American, yes.
I'm sure that you're aware that there are American Muslims who read the U.S. Constitution side by side with the Sharia and see no difference. Now, you might say that hang on. You might say that they're deluding themselves, and I would agree with you. I think they're deluding themselves as well. But what I cannot disagree with, what I cannot dispute, and what you cannot dispute, is that it does happen. They exist. It is a fact that American Muslims, born and bred Americans, are reading the U.S. Constitution side by side with the Sharia and seeing no contradiction.
How do you
Is
define
it not a good thing?
How do you define Muslim?
Do you actually want to go? Do you want to go to these Muslims and say, hang about, no. What your religion and your God says is such and such and such. What would you want to do? Would you want to try and radicalize them in this way, or just sort of allow them to think this and get a American version of Islam?
If you ask me personally, I really see no way out.
You see side by side.
Yeah, if you look at it side by side, they are the antithesis of each other, to me.
No, that's not the point, though. That's not the point. The point I'm making is that there are Muslims who, yes, they're picking and choosing. I grant you that. But they genuinely believe in Islam. They genuinely feel in their heart of hearts, what am I? I am a Muslim. Do I see any difference between the U.S. Constitution and Sharia? No, I genuinely don't. And I've said multiple times, I think there will be Western versions of Islam. I genuinely think there will be an American Islam, a British Islam, a French Islam, so on and so on. There will be Western Islam, there will be European Islam, there will be American Islam. And, would you want to actually just walk up to them like you're a Salafi yourself and say, no, you've got it all wrong, here's what it actually means? Or would you just want to let them get on with it and convince other people of it and actually get these distinct Western flavors of Islam? Basically following the path of Christianity. Christians used to believe in a literal reading of the Bible. I don't know if you're aware of this. Christians used to crucify apostates. They fucking crucified them. Whereas nowadays, you get a Christian that walks out into the garden on a Sunday, sees their neighbour mowing the lawn, working on the Sabbath, I really should kill them. Doesn't happen. Why can't Islam follow the same path?
If I can respond, the difference is that Christianity has no political aspects. There is no, in the Bible, there is no political aspects. No Christian priest or a Christian scholar that I know of has said, yes, Christianity is a political system as well as an economic system, so forth and so forth. Okay, I've been to these Islamic bookstores here in America. I don't know if you're familiar with a man named Molhid. He was a famous Pakistani cleric. He set up his own political party. Hardcore, I guess you could use the term Islamist, but to me, a Muslim, nonetheless. His work is mainstream. You can walk into any Islamic bookstore, any one in America, and you will find his work. I'm sure it's the same in the UK. I'm sure it's the same in other parts of Europe. This guy takes Islam seriously. He takes it literally. And if you may give me one moment, I can sum up for his viewpoint on Islam, not just as a religion.
Yeah,
I'm not talking about a personal spiritual belief. I'm not talking about people who keep it to themselves and who don't bother me, who don't want to enforce their views on me. But he says this: Islam is not a religion in the sense the term is commonly understood. It is a system encompassing all fields of living. Islam means politics, economics, legislation, science, humanism, health, psychology, and sociology. It is a system which makes no discrimination on the basis of race, color, language, or external categories. Its appeal is to all mankind. It wants to reach the heart of every human being.
Okay.
I mean, you cannot divorce any aspect from it.
Okay, would you agree that Islam is what Muslims make it to be?
Well, I don't see the very term Islam is ambiguous. I mean, it depends if you're talking about Sunni Islam, talking about Shia Islam, Sufi Islam.
Yes or no? Is Islam what Muslims make it to be? Yes or no?
Is Islam what Muslims make it to be?
Is it what the texts say, or is it what Muslims make it to be? Yes or no?
Historically speaking?
Well, historically speaking, I mean, if we're talking historically, then my point is made for me.
The jurists.
Hang about. Historically speaking, Islam has been what Muslims make it to be. It's not been the Qur'an, it's not been the Hadiths. I mean, a lot of Muslims say that the Ottoman Empire was one of the greatest and the last true Muslim caliphates. I will pay you. If you can find me anywhere in Ottoman history it actually implemented full Sharia and was successful, I will give you my motorbike, my life savings, and one of my legs, because you can't find it. Like, Sharia does not work. It's never worked. In every successful Muslim empire, they have not used Sharia.
Even there is no
Never.
People still believe it works, though. People still believe it, though. They still believe in
They believed it, but they didn't abide by it because it didn't work.
Well, they couldn't implement it fully because they were always in a minority.
No, I'm not talking about minorities. I'm talking about successive, expansive Islamic empires. They never fully implemented Sharia because it didn't work. The greatest caliphates of the world in all of Islamic history has never implemented full Sharia.
Yes, but certain trends have followed. We have to admit that slavery followed. Having concubines followed. My country, India, has suffered the biggest Islamic Holocaust of probably the entire world. Estimates up to 60 to 80 million.
One of the things about India I find quite amusing. It's kind of twofold. If you look at the conversion of Indians to Islam and even Christianity, then the reason for this is because there were certain things that were appealing. In native Hinduism, you had this caste system, and the lowest of the low, the untouchables, they could never ever hope to rise beyond that. Their children could never hope to rise beyond that. Whereas in Islam and Christianity, you had this idea of universal brotherhood.
Didn't they consider atheism?
All the Ummah, so you could actually rise against that. But
why did it have to be another?
Even in the expansion into India, you had so many Muslims that eventually just kind of said to themselves, you know what, fuck it, there are too many of them, we can't kill them all, let's just say they're people of the book, or let's just say they're
Yes,
so even right there with India, you would not get in Sharia.
True, but at the end of the day, Hinduism survived because paganism in general, I include Hinduism as a version of paganism. Paganism historically has been decentralized. It never had a central authority. It's never been expansive. It's never been anything like monotheism. Monotheism and paganism are diametrically opposed to each other. Paganism has been historically tolerant and pluralistic because of its plurality of worship, because of its plurality of gods. Then monotheism comes along and says, not so fast. There's only one God, there's one path, and there's one way, and there's one book. So they're diametrically opposed. So you look at historically India. New religions will welcome in. The Jews, for instance. The Jews were persecuted throughout the world, and the only places where they found refuge were two places: China, India. And why is that? Because of the pagan influence. They were tolerated, and they were given it. It's just the whole thing, and India of itself. I mean, that's why Hinduism has survived today. Look at all the other cultures and pagan cultures that Islam conquered. Not a trace. Not a trace. Where are the original pagans of Saudi Arabia?
I think probably the reason that Hinduism survived is
Sorry, Jeremy, do you want to speak?
The reason Hinduism survives is the sheer number of Hindus. I mean, if there were 10 or 20 million Hindus, they probably would have been extirpated by the Muslims, by the Zoroastrians.
Yeah, the Zoroastrians came to India as well after Persia was conquered by the Muslims. It's because of pagan influence.
India had a very, very strong army. Don't forget, it was one of the few nations that actually stopped Alexander the Great.
Yeah.
That was before Islam came along. Now, Islam, I believe, is quite right in what Raven said. They did promise the underclasses a freedom to be able to be more than what they were. And many flocked to them, and it's well believed that by historians that that's why they started to join Islam. But they were only replacing one god with another.
Pretty much.
Wrong.
But
can I interrupt?
Yes, sorry.
Just because Raven asked just before, what is Islam? Is it what people makes of it, or is it what is described in the scripture? And I mean, if you ask Erdogan, Recep Erdogan, he says Islam is Islam. There is no difference. So he makes Islam, or does it not make? Now, who decides if what he says is right or not? So I can't take just the people on it, but have to consider the scripture itself. Or is it wrong?
The word Muslim, if it's defined to mean someone who calls himself a Muslim, is worthless. It doesn't mean it. I mean, if I say I'm a Muslim, okay, you now have to consider me a Muslim because I just said those words.
But Raven, I'll say this though, Raven. Just to say this point, you have. I mean, for me, the deal breaker is this: is that when I talk to a religious person, specifically if I'm talking to a theocrat, specifically, either you believe that sovereignty belongs to the individual, or you believe that sovereignty belongs to God. These two things are incompatible. So either you have one or the other, and you have to ask.
What if I replied to you, just playing the part of a Muslim? What if I replied to you, there is no compulsion in religion, it's not for me to decide, it's for Allah to decide?
Mm-hmm.
Your response?
If you said that, I would say, wait a minute, let's go to your holy book, let's look at 9:5, let's look at 9:29, let's look at 9:73, first off, let's look at that, let's look at the Prophet's life, let's look at who he assassinated because people insulted him, like Asma bin Marwan, who wrote poetry against him, and he had her executed while she was sleeping, while she was breastfeeding her children, should I say. Like, you have to look at the biography of this man and look at what he did and how he conducted himself. You can't just say,
play the Hadith again.
Exactly. I mean, you have to understand the concept of dimitude and all this other stuff and take it in its totality instead of cherry picking. I can cherry pick the Bible and say, oh yeah, Jesus was a great guy and Christianity is great, Christianity is benign, blah blah blah. You can cherry pick anything and make it look great. That's the thing. You have to take it in its totality.
The thing is though, everybody cherry picks. I mean, stop spamming. I mean, I've heard a lot of, I've seen a lot of Stop Spamming's videos, and Stop Spamming puts it absolutely perfectly. Stop Spamming says that most Muslims are better than their God, and this is kind of a point right here. You haven't really addressed anything that I've said. You haven't addressed the fact that the most successful Islamic empires that were Islamic empires that called themselves Muslims never implemented Islamic law. You haven't addressed the fact that there are American Muslims that read the Constitution side by side with Sharia and see no difference. All you've really said is kind of a very cheap cop-out argument.
But that just means...
In that particular sense. Because most Muslims aren't literalists. Most Muslims aren't Salafists.
That just means they're pseudo-Muslims. They're not Muslim.
But isn't that the only way that Islam can survive?
Otherwise, what's the meaning of the word Muslim? I mean, can we nail down the meaning of the word Muslim?
One who submits to God, who submits to his dictations.
So am I a Muslim? Am I a Muslim? I mean, I just said I was.
You're a filthy kafir. That's what you are.
No.
I just said I was a Muslim, though.
Jeremy didn't say the Ashahada. La ilaha illallah.
I'm not going to go that far.
now I am the only Muslim here, I would say. And I say Muhammad was a pedophile, a child molester, God doesn't exist. What makes me really then a Muslim?
I mean, I know Muslims that eat pork and drink alcohol all the time. I mean, are they Muslims? I mean, let's be honest. I mean, it depends on your definition. But for me, it's the person who takes it literally, who believes in implementing it, and who won't be convinced otherwise. So, I mean, there's varying degrees of Muslims. I'll give you that. But as far as your Sharia question goes, every caliphate I know apply the concept of dhimmitude, and that's enough, for me. The policy of suppressing non-believers and taxing them beyond their means, that alone in itself proves enough to me that Islam cannot tolerate differences. It has to subjugate. It is supremacist by nature when it is implemented, on a political level. So that's what I'm talking about. I mean, okay, they may have not implemented the full Sharia punishments. Okay, fair enough. But did they apply dhimmi regulations? Did they make them pay jizya? Did they stop they weren't, someone, destroyed temples. India, again, destroying pagan temples, Hindu temples. That is on record. And yet, in India, there's this complex of saying, well, it wasn't everybody. Some of the rulers were nice. Some of the rulers actually banned prostitution and alcohol, so that was a good thing. Just apologetics. That just, when they came in, the local population was suppressed. They were humiliated. They were not allowed to, propagate their religions, different religions or different, philosophies. That's just a fact. So whether they applied it fully, I could give less of a shit. The point is, how did they treat the others? How did they treat the dissidents? How did they treat the non-believers? How did they treat the apostates? How did they treat, people who thought and acted differently? That's enough for me.
Vladimir Lenin did it. He didn't always practice communism exactly. He actually established some markets during his reign, but he's still a communist. And the point is, when they really do practice the real thing, that's a problem. So, I mean, I don't know really. Yes, it's true. Most Muslims are better than their God, but the problem is, even if it's just 70% Sharia, for every guy that are sold to slavery, for every guy that, I don't know, are stoned to death or whatever, I mean, it's a tragedy.
But I definitely agree with you on your point about Christianity. Yes, Christianity is different. Christianity has changed. Islam in 1400 years has changed very little. Like these movements that you're referring to of Wahhabism and Salafism, I wouldn't call those reform movements. I would call those revivalist movements. They're trying to revive and go backwards. So to me, that's the pure form of Islam. They're trying to get rid of all the innovations. So grave worship, music, and all that other stuff. They're trying to purge it of all the non-Muslim influences. So for me, they have a religious grounding for that. I think the Prophet said in a Hadith that whoever innovates something has nothing to do with my religion, or something to to that effect. There's no, I mean,
كل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار.
Thank you. Thank you, Habibi. Thank you, Habibi. So, I mean, it's different. I mean, Christianity has changed, and Christianity will continue to change, in my view. But for me, the Muslims of today have a choice. Either they believe in theocracy or they don't. I'm concerned with the ones that do believe in theocracy.
Okay, how would you change it?
I don't think it's possible, man. I honestly don't think it's possible unless the higher level institutions stop preaching hatred against Jews, stop preaching hatred against infidels, stop preaching armed jihad and offensive jihad. I don't see any way out. I do not see any way out. So I would prefer them.
How do you see the reform movement, though?
I mean, I see voices, yes, but they're minorities within a minority. So unless we give them a platform, unless we give them a base, I think it's pretty much hopeless. And now, not to be a pessimist, but I'm being a realist. I think, in my view, that I don't think that we have much optimism.
So do you think Yashad Banshi and Majid Nawaz, they have no voices?
No, I'm saying that they do, but they are a minority within a minority. They don't really.
Okay.
I don't think that they'll be able to. I mean, they might be able to make an impact. Maybe their ideas will have an impact sometime down the road. But as we're talking about right now, at this point in time, at this moment, I do not see anything to be hopeful about in terms of Islam changing. I'm not talking about reform or anything, but changing to stop the anti-Semitism, to stop the kafirophobia, as I call it, and armed jihad. You cannot, a Muslim that believes in armed jihad, offensive jihad, to overthrow and to establish Sharia. If somebody believes that, he is antithetical to the whole Western world, in my view, antithetical completely.
Well, TJ, I love what you're saying. Really resonates with me, particularly here in the UK. When you talk about kafirophobia, that is a real issue. There are very segregated Islamic societies and communities in the UK. There are Muslims that never speak to non-Muslims. There are those that are afraid of the quote-unquote kafir, and actually encourage people to never, ever, ever speak to them. But the thing that really does get me is that, please correct me if I'm wrong, and I will admit I've had a bit of wine, so
no worries.
So please correct me if I'm wrong. But what basically seems to be what I'm really getting from you is, like, particularly when I use the example of the Sabbath, like it says in the Bible that you should kill someone working on the Sabbath, and then the point I made is that show me a Christian today that will walk into their back garden, look over the fence, see their neighbor mowing his lawn on a Sunday, and say to themselves, working on the Sabbath? I really should kill him. It doesn't happen. And when I mention these particular Muslims, when I mention the fact that throughout antiquity, the Sharia has not been used, when I mention that there are American Muslims who read the Sharia side by side with the Constitution and see no difference, and I agree that they're cherry-picking, or any of the reformist movements I could make, like the Agnostic Muslims by Hassan Radwan, which is saying that the Qur'an has to be used has to be viewed with human reason. It seems to me what you're basically saying is that, yeah, Christianity progressed from literalism to poetry and metaphor, but Muslims can't do that. If that's what you're saying, why can't Muslims do that? Why can't we allow it? Why can't we encourage these unique Western flavors? Why can't we encourage American Islam? Why can't we encourage British Islam? Why is it that we have to insist to believers who do cherry pick, who are moral people, who, as Stops Famine says, are better than their God? Why do we, as non-believers, have to say to them, you know what, the Salafis, they're right? What the fuck?
Oh, okay, if I can respond to that. I'll say this. We can encourage them. We can. I mean, I'm not saying, I'm not going to be the Führer here and say that you can't do that, right? I'm not going to tell you what you can and can't do. You can do that.
I'll teach you.
Yes, sir. No.
I was actually waiting for that somehow.
Führer of the Furious. No. No. Basically, the difference is that if we look at the three, taking Islam in the scope of the other two monotheisms, so Judaism and Christianity, their books are not the literal word of the Creator. They are inspired.
Stop. Yes, they are.
They are inspired by the Creator. They are not literal.
No, stop. Yes, they are. The original books were the actual word of God. That's why you got Jews that fuck over the Palestinians in favor of Israel, because it's right there in the Torah. God Himself said, yeah, this bit of land right here, God himself, I'm personally giving this to you. This was a massive thing for thousands of years. It's only since the Enlightenment that we've come to this stage of, oh, it's all metaphorical. No. If you say to me, it's never been that it's the literal word of God, I have to stop you there.
I'm talking about today. I'm talking about today at this point in time.
It's today in this point of time, yes, but that right there is my point. The Islamic world,
have to talk about
whatever you define the Islamic world as, has never had a Saint Augustus, has never had an Enlightenment, has never had a Martin Luther.
Yes, and do you know why that is?
But when Muslims today are trying to actually follow that same path, to look at the Qur'an and the Hadith metaphorically or historically, it pisses me off how many non-believers try to fucking knock them down. I mean,
if I can respond to that, if I can respond to that, the reason is, if you know somebody who, by the name of Al-Ghazali, closed the door on reason in favor of revelation. If you read his works, he said that mathematics was the work of the devil.
Well, yeah, he was the one that basically
he was the one that
philosophically.
Exactly. If Averroes, while I disagree, he wrote a book on Islamic theology, which you can get online. He was actually a Maliki, and he supported jizya and killing of apostates and all that. But putting that aside, if Averroes had won that battle,
I just said that there's no Islamic equivalent of Saint Augustus. He was like the Antichrist. He was like the anti-Augustus.
Yes. That's the thing. Ghazali won that battle, and that shaped everything that happened afterwards. And I think that people they underestimate that. And it needs to be understood that historically speaking, like if we look at the printing press, the Islamic world rejected it, and look at what happened in Europe versus what happened in the Islamic world. The Reformation.
In Europe, the printing press was only invented in Europe 700 years. 700 years after the Chinese invented it. So that's kind of a shitty comparison.
Well, no, I'm talking about the impact of that. I'm saying that when the printing press came out, and ideas were then debated. Ideas were debated, and then the Reformation happened, and then the Enlightenment, and so forth and so forth. Because ideas were easily dispersed, ideas were easily made available, and it's just the two different paths that the Western and the Islamic civilization took. I think that has played a prominent role, on top of the theological aspect. So I mean, you have to reverse hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years of one-way, narrow-minded, and single viewpoints.
I agree with absolutely everything you've just said. I agree with all of it. But we're not living hundreds of years in the past. We're living today, and in today, there are Muslims that are following this trend that Christianity went through, and that's what I'm saying. I'm not talking about 100 years ago, or 200 years ago, or 500, or a millennia ago. I'm talking about today, and today there are Muslims who are viewing the Quran and the Hadiths in a certain way. They're trying to square it with the 21st century, and
they can try.
The fact that for the past 1,000, however many years, they didn't do that is irrelevant, because of one simple thing. They are starting to do it today. And today is what I'm concerned about, because quite frankly, this is when I live. I live in today. I don't live 1,000 years ago.
Have there ever been any Jews who believed that the Torah fell out of the sky having been created by God? Because there's a lot of Muslims who literally believe that, aren't there? So that you can always have human
Are you saying Orthodox
fallibility.
Jews don't believe the same thing?
You can always have human fallibility when it's humans writing the book.
Are you
Whereas if God directly wrote the book, it's perfect.
That?
Sorry?
Are you seriously going to say to me that the Hellenistic Jews don't believe that?
Don't believe what?
the Torah, well, as you said, fell out of the sky. Just to use your metaphor.
I thought the idea was that it was written by Jewish people.
No. Okay. This idea in Judaism, this basically happened because of Hitler. Okay, it literally was because of Hitler. The Holocaust happened because so many Jews looked around and said, "How can God let this happen to us, the chosen ones, the chosen people?" And
sorry,
it
Raven.
was the Holocaust
Raven, sorry. I have to interrupt you. That is some bullshit.
Which led to Judaism to be metaphorical to the point that half the Jewish population are atheists. But it was a Holocaust that did that.
That's nonsense, Raven. If you look at old books, way before Hitler even was born, you see the whole notion about a Zionist nation and about God punishing them. You see that this in the story of Egypt, and you see this in the story of deporting them to Babylon. This is nothing new for the Jewish, especially the Jewish historic. That's nonsense to say it's something new about Hitler, and the reason is the Holocaust. That is just clear nonsense.
It's not.
You just have to read.
If you look at the history, of Jewish
a
theology,
group that did say that. What Raven
then
said. There was a group of Jews who did.
After every tragedy, you have people who say something like that. That's nothing new. That's what I mean.
You shouldn't dismiss what Raven has said because it actually did happen. Now, it's not totally the reason. It's not that it hasn't happened before, and it certainly won't be that it won't happen again. But there will come times in everybody's life who is a believer who will question their God because God doesn't exist. So he can't fulfill the promises you expect from it.
But I mean, especially the Babylon exportation of the whole Hebrew nation people. I mean, if you read old books, they say the same. Oh, we have done such tragedy. We have overlooked our God, and now He is punishing us with this, and therefore this and that. It's the same. Just the scale is maybe in the Second World War a little bit larger. That's the only difference. That's really the only fucking difference.
If I can, Jews that genuinely believe this scripture fell to the minority because of Hitler. It's exactly what I said and exactly what JPZ said. Yes, you can look throughout antiquity and find Jews that made various arguments. You can look at, you can find conquest of Spain. You can find so much. I don't disagree with this, but as JPZ said, it doesn't take away from the fact that the Holocaust had this massive impact, which led to the Torah being taken metaphorically. You cannot, if you look at the history of Judaism and look at the theology of Judaism, the scholars of Judaism throughout the ages, you cannot deny this fact. In fact, I mean, in Israel, hang about. In Israel, right now, in Israel today, the government is actually coping with a renewal of Jewish literalism, which is kind of fucking over their politics. And I mean, what you just said is bullshit. I'm sorry, it's bullshit. Yes,
the same notion you have also in Spain, Raven.
Back to the Holocaust.
I mean, you're thinking you are so right, but you're so fucking wrong.
There's really no comparison. I mean, to me,
I think if the Jews had not abandoned God when they decided to have a revolution and kick the British out of Palestine, they would have reinvented a theocracy, but they didn't. They decided to go for a secular nation. And I think that was because they had left the theocracy of their religion. They didn't want it anymore. That ruled in their lives.
The fundamental difference is Old Testament is the history of the Jewish people, basically, and whereas the Quran is God's rules for how to live, which are timeless. That's kind of how I view this. So they're able to move away from the Jewish history because they're moving into the future. But you can't move away from God's timeless rules.
How would you respond to the Jews in London that are saying we're having Jewish events, women cannot walk on this street, or that women who drive their children to school, their children will not be accepted into these schools?
But they're choosing to.
This renewal of Jewish literalism, how would you respond?
They're choosing to live in the past. They're choosing to live in the past. Their texts aren't supposed to be timeless, whereas the Quran is supposed to be timeless.
No. It was Christianity that said that. Deuteronomy still applies if you're a Hellenistic Jew. It still applies. That's why you get stories in the newspapers saying that, oh, there's a Jewish march or whatever, women cannot walk on this side of the road. That's why you get Jewish schools and headmasters saying, if a mother drives their children to school, you cannot come to this school. Your children are disqualified. I'm sorry. What you're saying flies in the face of reality.
Well, I mean, I could also throw out that Muslim in Germany held up a Quran in court and it says in here that I can beat my wife and the judge let him go, because it actually does say that in chapter 4, verse 34. I mean,
there are Jews in the Bronx. There are rabbis in the Bronx that don't even see non-Jews as human, because they're the chosen people. We alone are God's chosen, and all the rest of you are damned to hell. You're talking bollocks. To actually say that Islam is so special among monotheism. I mean, in Christianity, you do have endorsements for secularism. I will grant you that. But in Judaism, to say that Judaism is so different from Islam when it comes to literalism, you're talking shit. I'm sorry. All you are really saying to me is that you know nothing about Jewish theology.
Didn't hell come along with Christianity? The Jews didn't have the
Well, the Valley of Gehenna, Funnily enough, Gehenna.
When people start applying these rules in a Jewish state, then I'll be worried.
I just want to get this point out. Gehenna, this idea of an eternal hellfire, which came with Christianity, which came with Jesus. Gehenna, the Valley of Hinnom, was an actual place in Jerusalem where you would burn rubbish. It was a place of perpetual fire. And then Jesus spoke of souls going to Gehenna. Gehenna, the Aramaic term Gehenna, is the root of the Arabic term Jahannam. Gehenna, Jahannam, Jahannam, Gehenna. Gehenna is the root term. And I just wanted to point that out.
That's a place in Islam. That's a place after death, raven. And the other was a place in life.
Yeah, and even then, threatening me with eternal torture. I could give less of a shit if I think that this is the only life I have. And after I die, that's it. And I don't really give a shit about metaphysical torture. But
we'll wait till you've been tortured for 100 years. See how you respond then.
Well, for me, at least. To me at least, I can't speak for others, but I can speak for myself. I could give less of a shit about hell. It's really, they describe it as a place of torment and suffering and fire, sure, but that's about it. And to me, to make believe is just like Santa Claus. But beyond that point, when there's a Jewish, theocratic state that's actually applying, these, their laws and actually killing people that work on the Sabbath, then I'll be maybe somewhat worried. But there's no international Jewish movement that's trying to overthrow governments and install their version of religious law over society. There
are Jewish groups which are trying to overthrow Israel for the sole criteria of Jewish law. What Judaism actually teaches is that the land of Israel will only be established with the coming of the Messiah, and there are literalist Jews in the world today, even in Israel, who are campaigning against Israel because it's a false state, because the Messiah has not yet come, So the country of Israel, as we know it today, is illegitimate.
And are they killing people because of what they believe? Are they killing people who think differently? Or are they killing people from other sects of Judaism?
If I actually went online and went through the last 60 years, if I found one person, just one, who killed for that reason, would that make a point?
No,
Probably
it would
not,
have to be
because
every day.
because
It would have to
it
be
would
on a
have to be
daily
an everyday
basis.
occurrence. It would have to be an everyday occurrence for a number
Exactly.
of years, like the Shia-Sunni split. I was just trying to say the Shia-Sunni conflict. Just go to Pakistan. More people are killed there in terrorist attacks every day than the whole Muslim world put together. You know, to me, there's no comparison. I mean, you know, Islamic totalitarianism or Islamic supremacism, as I like to call it, is causing destruction, mayhem, and chaos on a whole nother level, on an exponential level compared to all the other religions.
Well, what about Protestants versus Catholics?
Today?
No, not today.
Shouting.
Or antiquity. I mean,
Oh,
like, a
from
lot of
antiquity,
people, when
yeah.
we talk about Islam needing a reformation or a Martin Luther, which I completely disagree with. Islam does not need a reformation; it needs an enlightenment. But like Martin Luther, when he wrote his theses against the Catholic Church and nailed it to the door of church, nailed it to church doors, what that did is it unleashed a river of blood in the cities of Europe. We don't want that. We don't want a reformation. We need an enlightenment.
Okay, what is the effect of enlightenment as opposed to the effect of a reform?
Are you asking me?
No,
Sorry,
I was
I-
talking
I- I-
about.
I-
I was trying to
Oh,
talk
sorry,
to
sorry.
Raven and ask him what the difference is between the effects of an enlightenment and the effects of a reform.
Well, this is why I made the point the last time I was on the show that Salafis are a reformist movement. I mean, what is reform? Reform is just reforming. It's
No.
you know,
Raven,
Salafis are a
Raven.
reformist movement.
No,
And, the point I
Yeah,
made.
yeah. That's fine. You're repeating that. But what I'm asking is, what is the consequence of enlightenment and what is the consequence of reform?
The consequence of reform is whatever reformist wins. The consequence of enlightenment is that you historicize Islam.
So
Salafis are enlightenments.
No. Salafis are reformists.
I would say revivalist, but sure. I guess the terms are interchangeable.
Yeah,
sorry.
revivalist is actually the correct term because they are trying to go back to the roots.
Exactly what I'm
But I
saying.
still fail to see the huge advantage of enlightenment as opposed to reform. Just because Luther was a reformator and this had an effect on Christianity, does that automatically mean that the reform in Islam is going to take the identical same road?
Are you seriously going to say to me? Are you seriously going to say to me that Ibn Wahhab, the founder of Wahhabism, was not an Islamic reformist? You're going to say
He was a
that?
revivalist, I would say. But if you're asking, if you're saying what I mean by revivalist is somebody who wants to go back to the pristine form and to the earliest form of Islam. So if you mean by reform in that sense, then yes, I guess revivalist or reformist would be interchangeable. I mean, are you saying that?
You know what? I'm actually going to look up right now the actual definition of reform.
A reformist will look at the holy texts and reinterpret them to be what they want to reform to. The Enlightenment didn't use the holy text to come to its conclusions. That's the difference.
I mean,
Okay, so I've just looked up the actual definition.
The word reform. You have
Make
a form,
changes
you have a
in
front
something.
end, and you
typically
make
Whoa. Everybody easy, because now we have 5 people talking over each other. Come on, take your turn. Who wants to talk over each other? Over the other. Take it easy.
All right, who's going first then?
I mean, reform, the word itself. It's you have a form and you make just a new form out of it with the same amount of information.
Okay, Raven is looking up the definition now. Is that correct? So are you looking up the definition?
Reform, the definition of reform. Make changes in, brackets, something, typically a social, political, or economic institution or practice, end brackets, in order to improve it.
There you go. There you have it. So that is reform. Now, what Wahhabis did, they made it worse.
Revival.
No, but from their point of view, that was the reform. What that definition actually specified is the Wahhabist view, which is different to enlightenment. And let me actually look at the definition of enlightenment.
Okay, so what happens in a reform is that something gets reformed. So the form is being reshaped. So in other words, if you're looking at Islam, it doesn't really matter whether you're going forwards or backwards. It's a reform either which way. And I reject that definition. For me, a reform is always an improvement that is obvious for everybody, and not just for those who are internally involved in it.
So if I was a Muslim and I says to you that I wanted to reform Islam because there's like 1,000 years of bid'ah, and I said I wanted to return it to the purity of 7th century Arabia, how exactly would you argue with me?
I would say that that is not a reform, because a reform would get rid of slavery and the second-class treatment of women. In other words, all misogynistic and all forms of violence would have to disappear for it to be a reform.
Well, the two definitions of enlightenment: one, the action of enlightenment or the state of being enlightened; two, a European intellectual movement of the late 17th and 18th centuries.
No, please don't read the whole thing now. Can you condense it?
See, that right there is what I would mention with these American Muslims that read the Constitution side by side with the Sharia. This is exactly what I would define the agnostic Muslim movement that's been started by Hassan Radwan. This is exactly what I would define enlightenment as.
Yeah, and then comes along the Wahhabi and says, "Fuck you, you are no Muslim." End of story.
Yeah, but what do Christians say to the Westboro Baptist Church? Come on.
Yeah, but we're thinking of Enlightenment Islam as the preferable option, but we're children of the Christian/secular Enlightenment. So, if you're a Muslim that's not in that position, then why would you wouldn't automatically think of Enlightenment as the preferable option?
But the thing is, though, it's like I said last time I was on the show. I mean, Islam isn't going to survive. Like, okay, right? If we actually look at how many people are, if we look at the average, if we look at human lifespan today, and we take my age into account, I'm just in my 20s. So if I actually think of the lifespan of today versus the lifespan of 30 years ago versus how old I'm going to be, 100 years from now, 100 years, I'm probably still going to be around. I'm going to be very old, but it is very likely that I'm going to be around in 100 years. And 100 years from now, when I'm still around, there will still be Islam. 200 years from now, there will probably still be Islam. 300 years from now, I don't actually know if there would be an Islam 300 years from now, at least in any form that we'd recognize it. But this is the point I make. I mean, Islam isn't going anywhere. Even if you want it to be extinct, it's not going to be extinct.
Well, of course not. Nobody said that. Nobody said that.
I would say is to actually encourage an Islam which is compatible with the Western world in the 21st century.
I mean, it depends on what you mean by compatible. I mean, do you want them to reject miracles? Do you want them to reject, beating women? Do you want them to reject, for non-Muslims to pay jizya? I mean, there's so many things that we could go down a list that they would have to reject in order to conform to today's standards, right? I mean,
what I like is the idea of either it is making the Qur'an and Hadiths metaphorical, and metaphorical could mean a variety of things. It can mean historical, like it worked in the 7th century, but we're not in the 7th century. It can mean I actually do think Muhammad was a prophet of Allah, but Allah is God so far beyond human comprehension that the words he spoke could only be described in human terms, which makes them fallible, because they were said it was the wisdom of Allah said in the very fallible speech of Muhammad. or whatever variation of that you want to that you want to subscribe to or talk about, that's what I'm on about. That is the only way I can see Islam surviving. If it
You're so far away.
Dead.
You're so far away from an interpretation.
It is condemned to the dustbin of history.
You're so far away from interpretation of the Quran, in the spirit in which it was written, that you might as well just say the Quran. We reject the Quran. I mean, it doesn't make it makes more sense to just give up, to drop Islam, than to say we don't really think we can't really read the words as they were written and sort of interpret them in the most obvious way in the spirit they were written, because they might be beyond their comprehension or something.
The only thing that gives me hope is...
Sorry, T. Let me reply to Jeremy.
Yep, no
Jeremy,
worries.
that basically says to me that, Jews and Christians can do that, but Muslims can't.
Well, I think Jews and Christians are idiotic when they do it as well. They should just give up their religion.
Well, yeah, I agree. I actually agree with you, but I mean, it's not a realistic thing. I would rather a cherry-picked Islam, which is compatible with the 21st century, compatible with human rights. I would rather a cherry-picked Islam that you could compare to Christianity, rather than some backward religion which dictates death to apostasy, revoking your shahada leads to crucifixion. Women are worth half of a man. I would rather this cherry-picked version, and the reason I would rather that is because Islam is not going anywhere in the next few hundred years. It's just not. So I would rather a version of Islam that is compatible with the 21st century.
I mean, I guess it's possible. I'm not going to rule anything out, but I highly doubt it. But for me, the only thing that gives me hope is if another Ataturk comes along and does the same thing as was done before, completely separate religion from state. I think that's the only way. And once a country does that, once a Muslim majority country does that, should I say, then that might give me reason for hope or reason for optimism.
Raven, would you say the same thing about Nazism? It's not going anywhere, so let's try and get a reformed Nazism. Let's not try and reject it.
Maybe like this.
Yeah, but hang on.
Okay,
Nazis did not only have evil ideas, all right? Come on. I mean, we need to be realistic. Nazis were National Socialists, all right? So what they did is first of all, they tried to find jobs, and they managed to do that. They tried to increase and up the economy. They managed to do that. Then they only went crazy. So you can't say everything in Nazism or in National Socialism is automatically evil, because that's what it ended up as being. So you need to be, like what Sources normally says, you have to be more nuanced here.
But we knuckled down and just fought the Nazis. That's the whole point I'm making.
We didn't.
We didn't.
No. You did not. What was being fought with the crazy, stupid ideas propagated by Nazists.
Yeah, and how many people express it that way? How many people just say we fought the Nazis?
Because it's easier. The same way as I say Muslims are crazy. Well, they're not. It's just some Muslims. Or
how many people, whenever you say, oh, the Nazis were evil, say, well, hang on a minute, not all Nazis. We can't condemn all Nazis. No one wastes their time doing that.
Are we going to generalize, or are we going to be more precise here? I'm all for being precise here, because I'm saying that there's a lot of Muslims out there who just mind their own business, who just want to live their lives and just be normal people. And that is the whole point. So I don't condemn all of Muslims, and I don't condemn all of Islam. So I'm trying to say that there is a difference. So we can't just reject the entirety of Islam, because a lot of people cherish the idea of there being a God who's going to give them comfort and hope. And I cannot just go and say, look, you're not entitled to do that. So I'm going to go and reject the political side of Islam, but not the spiritual side.
Do you condemn all of Nazism?
No, that's what I just said. You can't.
Right, okay. Well, I think that's an interesting perspective. I think most people would probably just say they condemn all of Nazism.
Of course I will say that because it's easier. So in a colloquial sense, I will say that. In a colloquial sense, I'll also say there is no God. But, you know, once you get down to the nitty-gritty and you start being more precise, then you have to say, well, epistemology contradicts that, and blah, blah, and then you're starting to get more precise. But from a generalist point of view and generalizing and colloquial usage of the language, then says, I condemn Nazis, of course.
But if I can interject, I just think that, to me, I mean, you can't group all religions as one. I think that there's levels, that there's you know, some sort of hierarchy, if you will. You know, I don't have to worry about you know, Jains.
Jains, I know that this is the
Yeah,
whole. I know.
Yeah, yeah.
This is
But
why
I'm saying-
Islam is not a religion.
Well, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Is that Islam is different because I view it as an imperialist ideology, much like communism, fascism, Nazism,
Exactly.
and even Christianity for a lot of its. You know,
That's why I always say this in the definitions. Yeah.
it's about levels, you know. So I think that we need to make that distinction. I think that you cannot paint all religions with the same brush and put them on the same level and on the same pedestal. I think that needs to be understood. And as long as metaphysics, as long as a belief in a metaphysical world exists, we're going to be dealing with these, you know, like with these issues and with these problems.
And this is why I maintain that you need a reform. That's why I maintain that you can take some elements of Islam, keep the spiritual side, just go through the Quran, remove all the stuff with slavery and supremacy and all that shit, take out the political stuff, and take out the misogynistic stuff that women can only inherit half and you can beat them and blah, blah, blah. And Bob's your uncle. Then you have the spiritual side, and I don't have any objections to that.
What happened to not the last time I was on the show, but the time before that, when I made the argument for enlightenment as opposed to reform, and you said, okay, I'm not going to say in reform anymore. I'm going to stick with enlightenment. What happened to that?
Is that what I said?
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot about that. I must have been drunk. Because I don't really remember the argument with enlightenment. I don't really understand why I should say enlightenment instead of reform. Okay. Maybe it does make sense, Raven. Maybe it does make sense to say enlightenment because reform doesn't really mean that much. Maybe it doesn't have enough contents, and enlightenment is actually a more. Yeah, maybe it's a superior word. Maybe it is. I don't remember that. It's just that when I'm here, I will say, okay, look, I want reform because everybody understands exactly what I mean. Whereas if I say enlightenment, everyone, hey, what do you mean enlightenment? And then I need to explain it.
Well, I could just turn that around and say, what do you mean by reform? Such as my argument last time I was on the show that Salafis are a reformist movement.
Well, everybody understands that if I say reform, it means improving something.
Yeah, but again, that's eye of the beholder. Like to a Salafi, taking it back to 7th century Arabia is an improvement.
No, only from the that is the whole point. A reform in the general viewpoint. I understand. If you go down into the details, yes, you can say that reform to a Salafi will be going backwards to me. But I'm saying for the general public, for 80% of the world population, a reform is not going back to the roots.
You should just stick with enlightenment. So to answer Jeremy asked me. Sorry, could you repeat the exact question you said about Nazism?
Sorry, about what? Sorry.
You asked me something about Nazism and other people. I said that just let me light this cigarette, which I lit. Then other people started talking.
Can we stop talking about Nazis?
About Nazism.
Nazi folk.
No, are we?
I don't know if Jeremy's ever going to get his answer.
I would love to. Does anybody know? Because I've made a list, and actually, one day I want to make a video about it. Has anybody ever thought about the parallels between communism and Islam?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay,
sure.
We have 10 minutes. Okay, we're going to get chucked out here. That's the limit for a hangout. You're not allowed more. So please make it brief because we only have 10 minutes left and we need to stop the session.
No, hangout is 8 hours.
No, 4 hours.
8.
So why do I have the number of 4 in my head?
So you can't just talk for as long as you want to talk.
No, I remember 4 hours. I remember
longest-
Magic Sandwich.
my longest-
they used to.
I have it on record. My longest was 8 hours. That I can say. Maybe it changed, okay, but I remember 8 hours was possible.
If that's the case, I mean, I don't mind starting another hangout and continue this conversation because I think that we've had a very fruitful discussion thus far.
Would I get
I can't. Then you do it. But you start whatever. But I need to get up early tomorrow, so I'm not going to be part of the next 4 hours. So I'm going to bail out at the 4-hour mark. In other words, brief 10 minutes. Come on, hit it. You can do it.
So, would I actually get a link to the new hangout, or what would happen?
Yeah, I think I can invite people that I'm following, I believe, and I can invite them. So I'll just follow you, and then if you want to engage, then that won't be a problem.
Follow me, my loyal disciple.
All hail Raven. All hail Raven.
Are you an ex-Muslim?
No, I'm an ex-Sikh actually.
That's actually a pity. On the Council of Ex-Muslims, my actual tag is King of the Ex-Muslims.
No, I'm an ex-Sikh. Yeah, but I do have.
I kind of like Sikhism. I've always sort of viewed Wiragaru as kind of like the nicotine-free version of Allah.
You could say that. You know, there's no rituals. You know, there's no pilgrimages or anything like that. Everything's personal. So, yeah, I guess you could say that. Yeah, I mean, on some level, there's no. I guess.
Wiragaru, God of the Sikhs, the nicotine-free version of Islam.
What was the question again? Stop. I'm sorry.
The question was: has anybody ever thought of compiling a list of all the parallels between communism and Islam?
Yes, Ibn Warwick did this actually. There's a video where he spoke at Yale actually. It's on my YouTube channel actually, and he talks about the similarities. He talks for like 10-15 minutes. So he talked about in communism the zone of peace and the zone of war, similar to the House of Islam and the House of War.
Shit, why have I never seen this?
It's on my YouTube channel. If you want me to give you a link, I'll give you a link.
Please do.
That was similar, and then also the way that they run their states, where everything works from the top down, obviously, where the state runs everything pretty much. Obviously, suppression of the people that think differently. So if you don't agree with communism, the dissidents, all that stuff, you know what happened to them. Put into gulags and all that stuff, and I guess in the Islamic State you would be, I guess, imprisoned or even killed, I guess, depending on the offense.
Just in the last 13 and whatever seconds we've got left of the Jinn&Tonic show, Ibn Warwick made a very interesting point about how the Qur'an has parts missing from it, and I cannot remember the surah and the verse, but the bit I'm thinking, I cannot cite surah and verse, I'm sorry, but it's the bit of the Qur'an that says, "And if you fear for the orphan children," I'm paraphrasing, "if you fear for the orphan children, then marry the women among you." 1, 2, 3, or 4. That right there, what Ibn Warwick says, and it actually, it's exactly the same as my first interpretation when I read the Quran, is that there's a bit missing. Like, it's talking about, okay, so if you fear for the orphans among you, so it's talking about orphans, then all of a sudden it's talking about marrying women. And it seems that there is a verse of the Quran right there, which is missing.
I'm not sure about that particular verse, but in the Hadith, Aisha says that there was a verse concerning stoning. She wrote it down.
No, it's not about stoning. It's like, if you fear for the orphans among you, and Quranically, we can actually establish it's talking about orphans. It's not talking about women.
It's 4.3, and there are several.
So it's like, and if you fear for the orphans among you, then marry the women. And it does seem that there is a part of the Quran which is missing.
Why do you repeat everything 3 times? If you say it once, people can respond.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's
but you say everything 3 times, then I'm starting to talk, and then you're repeating it, and I think, how many times? Okay, it's 4.3, and yes, there is missing, like the stoning verse is missing, the burqa verse is missing, there are a lot of verses missing.
Now everybody's gone quiet.
I'm just trying to impress Stop Spamming. I want him to think good of me. That's why I repeat stuff. I'm making sure he's heard it.
So does anybody else want to say something while Raven is quiet?
When will this video come out? Stop spamming.
Which video do you mean?
You are planning this video about communism and Islam.
Oh, I've been doing that for 2 years, and I still haven't managed because I always think it's not complete. There's always something missing, and then I think of something new, and then I think, okay, let me add this, and then I put this on my list, and then it sort of vanishes, and then other more important things come up, and then it gets it's the usual thing.
Stop! I posted a link in the description.
Thank you.
Yep. So you can take a look.
You know,
at
Spam. I'm both ex-Marxist-Leninist and ex-Muslim.
I was going to not comment on what you just wrote there because I thought, no, come on, I don't want a war now.
No, but I meant maybe we can do a video together if you need any. I know.
Oh, okay.
I have
appreciate
almost
that.
memorized all the Marxist things when I was a kid. So, I memorized both things.
Yeah, I'm caught between two extremes.
You are the perfect candidate for stop spamming in this issue, I think. Ex-Muslim and ex-communist.
Yeah, but come on, I play nicely when other people are involved.
That's not true. I remember about today something happened with this poor little German guy. You shred in pieces about his theism.
Yeah, but he was an asshole. I'm talking about people that I've worked together with.
Okay.
Okay,
what's the problem? I didn't understand the problem.
With Masked Arab, for example, the videos I did with him, the videos I did. Okay, it doesn't matter. Okay, any last words?
I hate Islam.
Okay, any last nice words?
Today, Jeremy announced he's a Muslim.
Yeah, he's kind of. Yeah.
I'm a Muslim by Majid Nawad's definition.
What is that definition?
That means that he goes to strip clubs.
Yeah, the kind of Muslim who drinks alcohol, eats pork, goes to strip clubs, and doesn't care about the Qur'an.
Oh, then everybody's a Muslim. Now I understand.
A bit like a Near East guy, don't you, Jeremy? Everything's fine.
Okay, now we're drifting off into silliness. Any famous last words? There we go. No, great stuff. We finished 8 minutes early. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Lady, where's the ladies? Thank you very much for your contributions. Thank you very much for a very lively discussion.
Oh yeah, one last thing, by the way. Vote for Trump.
Vote for Trump. Oh, Raven is our lady. Okay, oh, that's true. And then what we're going to do is next week Abu is going to hold a. What are you going to do? A lecture? Is that going to be a lecture, or is it just going to be a short essay or something?
I don't. I'll see how much time I have to research it and see what I find. But I'd say something about there is no compulsion in religion.
Brilliant. No, this will be really, really nice. And other than that, I want to thank everybody. And if anybody else wants to join in next time, please go to www. Why do I say www? I mean, nobody says www anymore. Go to godless.ch, and then you can join in. If you want to come here and talk to the panel, be part of the panel, then you just click. You enter hangout.godless.ch. And then you are part of the Jinn&Tonic show. See you next week, guys. Bye.
Created a new hangout. Is there a link?
You what?
Has TJ created a new hangout? Is there a link?
Bye bye.
I would like to, if anybody else wants to join. I mean, if it's just us two, then. I mean, I don't know. Is anybody else interested?
I am joining and looking at what you're talking about. So. Just start one. I mean, you lose nothing.
Okay. 1 second. Never actually.
Jinn&Tonic after hours.
What are you going to do now? Are you going to start a hangout? Okay, I don't think you can. While you are in a hangout, you can't start another one.
True. Let me see. I've never actually set one up before.
I wouldn't even know how to.
Let's see. Let's see if I can here.
Should I start one so that you can join and talk?
Yes. Yes.
Hangout.godless.ch.
Right, I'm starting now and changing the link, and in about 1 minute you can join it again. Okay?
Okay.
Bye, guys. See you next week.
Wait, where's the link?
No. You don't need a link. All you need to do is you type in hangout.godless.ch in approximately 66 seconds.
Really?
Yeah, because Ike is going to start a new one now, and then he's going to change the link to hangout.godless.ch to the current one that he's just starting. So, as a service to you. So all you need to do is type in hangout.godless.ch in 1 minute, and then you will be transferred to the new one. Bye, guys.
Awesome. Staying in here for a few minutes.